Whether you love them or you hate them, the Despicable Me movies have a lot of interesting lore. Some of it is really weird, some of it is really important, and some of it kind of makes no sense at all. Actually, this is a very expansive franchise with a total of 6 feature-length films, so today I'll be watching every single Despicable Me and Minions movie in full while explaining everything that happens and overanalyzing all the little details you might have missed along the way. Also, there's a tier list at the end of the video. You know I had to do it to them. Is this franchise worth the hype? Are the Minions the most evil creatures to ever exist? Well, let's find out by watching every single Despicable Me and Minions movie ever. Our adventure begins with a stereotypical American family on vacation. We got the father with a cowboy hat, the mother with a Karen haircut, and the child on a leash? Doesn't get more American than that.
$300 million.
This family is visiting the pyramids in Egypt when all of a sudden, the kid escapes his harness, he climbs some scaffolding, and then falls off and straight up dies. Yep, there it goes. Another kid losing to gravity. The good news is the kid doesn't actually fall to his death because turns out a super evil villain stole the pyramids earlier that week and replaced them with safe inflatable versions. That kid got really lucky. That's good RNG. I'm not really going to get into the logistics of how someone could steal over 5 million metric tons of granite and limestone. So for now, just imagine some guy had the gun from Portal and just went crazy on the pyramids. This is when we skip ahead to Gru, who's the main character of this movie. Gru is cold-hearted and kind of a goofy guy whose main goal is to become the world's greatest villain.
And then act like I don't know nobody.
He's voiced by Steve Carell, who everyone knows, I'm sure, and is extremely funny like 8 out of 10 times. It's clear from these opening shots that Gru is 100% alright with using his own weapons and creations to get what he wants. He even jokes about killing the neighbor's dog at one point. That was honestly kind of wild. Wasn't expecting that.
You know dogs, they go wherever they want to go.
Unless they're dead.
Gru goes inside his wacky cartoon home, but before he can properly relax, he gets a knock on his front door. Who could it possibly be? My money's on the Amazon delivery guy. That guy is always up to something. No, it's actually these 3 young girls who are just trying to sell some cookies or something. Gru wants nothing to do with that, however, so he does a 300 IQ gamer move and pretends he's not at home.
This is a recording.
The longest pause ever. That's actually funny. Anyway, a few moments later, after the girls leave, and Gru finds out that another villain stole the pyramids recently. Meaning the villain who stole the pyramids wasn't Gru. It was another guy. He couldn't even steal the pyramids? Wow, Gru is such a loser. This is when Gru decides it's time for a serious meeting in a secret basement lair. There's some random cartoon shenanigans since he's evil and stuff, and while entering the secret lair is when the viewer is introduced to the Minions. Everyone already knows the Minions, okay? I don't need to go over who they are. Right? Except not really. Does anyone actually know what these things are at all? Like, they're these weird yellow alien looking dudes. Some of them have 2 eyes, others only have 1 eye. It's hinted that there's some kind of lab experiment maybe, but they're all kind of stupid and childish for some reason. Also, there's like a million of them, so if they really wanted to overthrow the government, they probably could. That's not part of the movie. It's just a thought I had. Anyway, so Gru's finally got everyone huddled together. It's super clear that the Minions love this guy. He's like Billie Eilish if she did a concert in front of a bunch of depressed high schoolers. They go crazy for him. Gru talks about how although no one here stole the pyramids, they still stole a lot of stuff, and they had a really good villainous year.
We stole the Statue of Liberty.
What?
The small one from Las Vegas.
That's honestly still like huge though, isn't it? Despite all that, none of it is really as evil as you might think it is. So Gru's come up with the ultimate plan. The plan that will keep him remembered forever. His plan is, and I'm not kidding here, to steal the moon. What? I know this is a cartoon, okay, but just humor me for one moment. Sure, moving the moon around would be pretty iconic. I'm sure everyone on Twitter would be talking about it in real time. But I also think moving the moon around would cause major disruptions in the Earth's oceans, possibly leading to multiple massive natural disasters, probably ending humanity as we know it. But again, you know, it's just a cartoon. You might be thinking to yourself, how is he actually going to do this? Well, Gru's idea is to ask the bank for a loan so he can then build a rocket, and then, once he's in space, he can use a shrink ray he stole from the Chinese, I'm not kidding, shrink the moon, bring it home, yada yada, super evil villain. I haven't heard of a plan this good since Luffy planned on never finding the One Piece, ever. God, that show is so long. Anyway, Gru is now at the bank, but while he's waiting, he meets a guy called Vector, who thinks of himself as the sexy George Clooney type, but he's really just an overly goofy guy and kind of a nerd. A little later, and Gru is pitching his idea to the bank, and to everyone's surprise, the bank actually likes it a lot. The only problem is, you know that shrink ray that Gru was going to use on the moon? Well, he doesn't actually have it yet. Why wouldn't you bring the shrink ray before going to the bank? I will never know. Another big criticism the bank has towards Gru is that he's getting kind of old. Apparently, Gru is like 50 years old in this movie, which honestly, I would have never ever guessed. He looks a little younger than that at least. Like I probably would have said like 40, like max 40. This is when the scary bank guy mentions Vector, the guy Gru met earlier. Vector is young, full of new ideas, and also he just stole the pyramids? That's right, this guy. He stole them. He's the mastermind. He's the guy that did it. So now Gru gets no money, no sympathy, no text, no females, L plus ratio plus big nose. He also freezes Vector's head because, you know, that guy. We hate that guy. We then skip directly into the next scene, which is just Gru stealing the shrink ray. And like, he just straight up does it. It's a cool scene, I guess, but there's like no one stopping him the entire time. That is until Vector shows up and steals the shrink ray from Gru while flying away. That's right. Vector must have followed Gru all the way to China just to steal it from him there and then bring it back to his house in San Francisco. What a guy. Before he dips though, Vector ends up using the shrink ray on Gru's ship, so it gets really small, and eventually he gets away with the weapon.
I hate that guy.
Me too, Gru. He looks like that one dude from the Big Bang Theory. Anyway, a bit of backstory now on the 3 girls that were trying to sell cookies to Gru earlier. Turns out all 3 of them are orphans. They live in an orphanage ran by Miss Hattie. I'm not gonna lie, Hattie is kind of the second coming of the devil. She's a horrible person and forces the girls to sell cookies every day to fund the orphanage, I guess. I don't know why. She makes them do it. Also, if the kids misbehave, they're put in a box or something. That's definitely illegal. Someone please call Child Protective Services right now.
FBI, open up!
These girls are all pretty innocent. They're all just struggling to find a home. Deep down, they just want to feel loved, which is actually kind of sad. But skipping ahead now, this all connects together because Gru is now trying to sneak into Vector's home to steal the shrink ray back. Also, I just want to mention the Chinese never actually make an effort in this movie to get their weapon back. He tries disguises, he tries gadgets, but nothing seems to really work. All this while Vector is playing Valorant at the highest level in his basement. This is when the 3 orphan girls show up and try to sell him cookies. Gru is watching from a distance and kind of smirking because he's excited to see them get blown up or something like that. But to his surprise, Vector actually lets them inside because he has a sweet tooth and is probably just extremely lonely, let's be honest. After seeing the girls get inside, Gru gets his second big idea of this movie. Gru decides that he's gonna adopt these 3 girls himself so that he can then sneak into Vector's house and steal the shrink ray. There's a lot of steps to this plan, I won't lie. He dresses like a dentist, he uses his level 100 Riz to convince Miss Hattie. I'm pretty sure he forges all of his documents, cause like, how else would this guy be able to bring 3 little girls home with him? At first, the girls are all excited by the news until they actually see him, which is when they pack it up. There is one girl though, the youngest one named Agnes. She's just happy to finally have someone to hug. She's great, we love Agnes. All my homies love Agnes. Hey, let's check in on Vector real quick.
Tiny toilet for little tiny baby.
He's so weird. He's such a weirdo. Anyway, the girls arrive at Gru's house and they immediately recognize it because they tried selling cookies here before. Remember? It was like a day ago or something. They enter it and it's filled with a bunch of sharp weapons and evil bad guy stuff, I guess. Gru is also very cold towards them, giving them only newspaper to do their business on. Beep beep boop boop. At one point, Gru thinks that one of the kids actually dies and he just shrugs it off. She doesn't actually die. It's just a cartoon haha. But Gru obviously didn't care. A little later, and Gru and Nefario are in the basement lair working on some stuff while the girls are left upstairs. They make a weird fart gun for some reason. But perhaps the most important thing, they also made some cookie robots. These are straight up just little drones that look like cookies. I'm sure you can tell what these are for. This is when the girls waste no time in immediately finding the lair themselves. Like, this has to be a record or something. They do it right away. They just show up. They're walking around wondering what all this science stuff is naturally, which is when we get probably the funniest scene in the entire movie. At least for me. Okay, I'm not sure why, but this got me in tears the first time I watched it.
Can I drink this?
Do you want to explode?
This is when Agnes's toy unicorn gets incinerated, so Gru gets these 3 minions to get her a new one. We need it ASAP. Okay, she's literally about to die. There's this whole bit of the minions doing wacky stuff in a supermarket. I won't go over it really since it's not that important, and I'm guessing everyone here already kind of knows how the minions act. Part of me really does enjoy their time on screen, and the other part of me wishes they would all simultaneously combust into a million pieces. So you know, there's like pros and cons to these guys. Later that night, Gru is still cold towards the girls, but the minions did kind of succeed their mission as they bring Agnes a brand new homemade unicorn toy. It's not exactly the prettiest thing, but it does show that the minions at least care and put in the effort when needed. So you might be thinking that this doesn't seem like anything other than your average kids movie at this point. And except for the blatant child abuse and the off-screen pet murders, you're probably right. But I promise, okay, things get a lot deeper from this point onward. The next day, and Gru wants to deliver the cookies to Vector, since that's the only reason he adopted these girls, remember? The girls say no because they have a big dance recital coming up and they need to go to the studio to practice. Remember this thing, it's pretty important. Also, who is paying for these dance lessons? I'm guessing the orphanage was, but like, you know, they're not orphans anymore, so that wouldn't make sense.
You are coming, right?
Of course.
Why is that mom wearing an I love mommy shirt? Anyway, it's time to deliver the cookies to Vector now. Little do the girls know, however, the cookies have been replaced with tiny robots. Also, I want to mention how the girls are still doing this whole cookie thing, despite not being at the orphanage anymore. Like, you'd think they wouldn't have to deliver them since they got adopted. Someone else from the orphanage would do it now. Maybe Gru is lying to them and making them deliver cookies that they don't even have to deliver, but then Vector would probably get an actual delivery for the cookies that he bought from someone else, and that never happens. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. That doesn't make sense at all to me. So there you go. The robot cookies do their thing, which allows Gru to enter the house undetected. But just as he's about to leave, the robots say, actually, never mind, and close the wall on him so he can't escape. Now Gru and some minions are trapped inside Vector's house and need to get out with the shrink ray somehow. They enter a vent, which is obviously human sized. Seriously, no vents are this size. Okay, what is this? A Spider-Man game? What are we doing here?
I'm already at full health.
I obviously can't show this scene in its entirety here. So a reminder to watch this movie yourself if you haven't in a while. Also subscribe. Gru escapes the house and now has the shrink ray, and the mission was successful. The only thing really holding him back now are the girls. So I'm not kidding, he devises a plan to get rid of them forever. I'm pretty sure you just adopted them, so there's a bunch of recent paperwork that would trace them directly back to you, but he's got the spirit, I'll give him that. There's this big carnival nearby, so Gru devises his third big plan of the movie. He wants to distract the girls at the carnival with fun activities, so he can then freely leave them, never to be seen again. This plan completely backfires though, since not only do the girls need an adult to get on most of the rides, but also when the girls are cheated out of a win, Gru wins it for them and starts to develop some legitimate feelings towards them. You see, earlier in the movie, Gru spoke to his mother a couple times, and it was very, very apparent that Gru was completely neglected as a child. His father is never shown, which is part of it, but his mother also never gave him the time of day. He'd be really proud of his own accomplishments, but Gru's own mother never so much as congratulated him, let alone showed him actual affection. Reading into it a bit deeper, Gru was set up to fail, essentially. Having absent parents and no real friends growing up, a beautiful and creative mind lost because there was no one to care for it. It's actually extremely sad and probably hits close to home for a lot of people. If you're watching this and struggling in any way, just remember that you are loved, and at least you aren't playing League of Legends on Twitch for 12 hours a day.
It sucks playing this shit.
As mentioned, Gru ends up developing some real feelings for these girls, not in any weird way, but in like a father figure type way. This is the first time that we know of where Gru is legitimately happy sharing a moment with other people. He finally has friends that give him attention and that praise him and that care for him. Sadly though, nothing good can last forever because this newly found happiness directly contradicts the moon mission. You'll see what I mean, more on that later. Gru calls the bank guy and shows off the shrink ray, so now he can hopefully get a loan or something. Sadly, this doesn't happen because as we stated before, Gru is just too old now. So although they like the plan, the bank wants someone else to pull it off.
You don't seem terribly.
Damn, bro's got the golden laptop. What is that, a Intel i9? This triggers even more flashbacks from Gru's childhood. Even when he built an actual functioning rocket at the age of 6, his mother still didn't care. This guy's got trauma, what can I say? But then, we get this movie's biggest twist yet. We find out that the bank guy is actually the father of Vector, the dorky orange guy. Maybe Vector is also adopted? Cause like, I'll be honest, I don't see the resemblance. We were led to believe that Gru was just old and losing his mojo, but turns out the bank was playing favorites this entire time. If you choose to take anything away from this movie, let it be its extremely accurate portrayal of nepotism in the real world. Like, this dude has been given literally everything. Okay, he didn't have to work for any of it. This is when Vector finds out about the shrink ray missing, so now he's got to come up with a plan to seal it back. We're just going back and forth here. During this time, Gru, who's extremely depressed right now, gives a speech to all his minions about how the bank has declined his request at a loan. This means that they can no longer build the rocket, which means they can't steal the moon, which means they'll fail their mission and be forgotten forever. But then, again, everyone's really sad, but this is when the girls hand Gru their piggy bank in what's probably the movie's most wholesome moment. Like, these four have really connected throughout this journey. It's great to see. Here's $2.15. Build a rocket. This motivates all the minions to start pulling out cash, which, like, how do they even have money at all? Maybe they just steal wallets all the time, but it would take a lot of wallets to get the $1 billion required for this journey. We get a quick montage of everyone helping out in building this thing, kind of. The mom even shows up and shows the girls some baby pictures of Gru. I guess now she wants to be a good mother out of nowhere. She was literally laughing at her son like 3 days ago over the phone. Not sure where that came from. The night ends with Gru giving the girls their long-awaited goodnight story. This is peak wholesomeness. Gru finally learning to open himself up to someone, and the others finally showing their love and care towards Gru. And this is when we get the deciding moment in this entire story. Remember how I said this newly found happiness will get in the way of everything? Well, turns out the day Gru planned to steal the moon is also the same day as the girls' dance recital. Gru obviously doesn't want to miss the girls' performance since he wants to be a good father figure who's present for his children, but he also can't just change the date of the rocket launch since it's astronomically expensive and counting on many things to happen on that specific day or something. Dr. Nefario, who's more mission focused, hates that these girls are becoming a distraction, so the very next day day now, and it turns out that the doctor called the owner of the orphanage to come get the girls back. And then she just does. By the way, Miss Hattie takes the kids and returns them to the orphanage and puts them in boxes for some reason. Listen, I've never adopted a child before, but surely you can't adopt 3 of them and then just return them a week later like they're furniture from IKEA or something. Anyway, the kids are pretty sad and feel a little betrayed, and rightfully so. Gru himself feels extremely sad. He was finally comfortable in life, and yet again, it got ripped away from his own arms. He tells himself that he's just not meant to be happy. Now, I know these themes aren't necessarily not made for kids, but I'd argue that it takes a good deal of emotional awareness to really understand the depth of what's going on here. But Darzii, I knew all the meanings and themes at only 5 years old. Congratulations. Who asked? With nothing else to distract him, the big day has come, and Gru decides to set off on his mission to steal the moon. Just before entering, a minion hands Gru the ticket of the girls' dance recital. Now, while Gru launches into space, a couple things of note actually happen. First, Vector shows up and tries to stop him or something, but because he's just kind of a guy, he fails miserably. And second, we see his regular ship and even a minion that got shrunk earlier turn back to normal size, meaning that the shrink ray's effects are only temporary. So if Gru brings a shrunken version of the moon back down to Earth, it could be very, very bad.
We have to warn him, and fast!
Bro's playing Mario Kart on 50cc right now. Gru shrinks the moon and starts floating off into space with no cord attached or some kind of jetpack or something. He'd probably just float forever here if this was real, honestly. But while floating, he sees the ticket, showing him what's important and reminding him that he could still make it. I'm not going to sugarcoat this part. Gru hurries up and makes it to the show, but sadly he was too late and missed all of it. Normally I'd leave it at that, but Gru actually finds a note on his reserved seat from Vector saying to bring the moon to him, implying that he's kidnapped the girls. We're in the last 10 minutes of this movie, and we can finally say that we know the main villain has done something evil. Terrific. So these last moments are kind of cool, actually. Gru really wants his girls back and gets all serious and badass. It's like he put on the Venom suit and he's ready to do whatever it takes. There's some really cool slow-mo bits, but eventually the fight gets taken to the sky. This is when Vector is getting away with the girls, while Gru, Dr. Nefario, and the minions are all following closely behind. The girls end up getting free somehow, and there's this epic moment where they end up jumping from ship to ship. All of them except the oldest girl, and arguably the one most like Gru, at least regarding her trauma, that is, since she gets held back. But thankfully for her, the moon is getting really big, really quick. It pushes Vector away and allows her to break free. How crazy. Gru and the minions save her because they all love each other and it's one big happy family now. Meanwhile, the moon becomes full size again while it's in Earth's atmosphere, might I add, which would definitely f some shit up, but whatever. Vector was on the moon when this happened, so I guess he's dead now. El Bozo. The next day, Gru is actually viewed as a hero in the news since he actually returned the moon, which is probably the best case scenario, I won't lie. Gru becomes more of a softie, finally hugging the girls and kissing all the minions on the head. Because in the end, is there anything in the world stronger than love? Some would argue that the machine used to move the literal pyramids at the beginning is probably stronger, but you know, that doesn't matter. And that was the movie, Despicable Me. There's this ending scene where everyone's dancing together, even Vector is on the moon dancing, I guess, so he's not actually dead. But yeah, that was the whole movie, start to finish. Obviously, there's some detail I didn't mention since I didn't want this video to be an hour long, but all in all, this movie actually kind of slaps. Much like myself, I'd imagine a lot of people who haven't seen this movie in a while remember it being this brain rot, silly comedy since the minions are involved, and the minions don't exactly have the best rep nowadays. But I can confidently say that the first Despicable Me movie is extremely unique and does a really good job at containing a deep and emotionally involved story while also being harmless fun for kids to laugh at. It's a banger. What can I say? It's probably not what you thought it was. Our adventure begins with 2 Russians playing cards at a top secret laboratory in the Arctic somewhere. There's gambling, there's guns. These are the 2 most Russian dudes I think I've ever seen. The game is cut short, however, because a giant magnet appears in the sky and steals all the equipment used at this facility. I'm not gonna lie to you, half the people here probably end up dying, but since this is just a goofy kids movie, you know we gotta put a toilet joke in there somewhere. Of course there is. He looks like Dr. Neocortex from Crash Bandicoot. This is when we cut to our main man, Gru. If you haven't watched my video on the first movie yet, watch that first. It's a banger. But if you have watched it, you know that Gru isn't just super duper evil, but he's also a super duper dad now. You see, turns out today is Agnes's birthday. Everyone say happy birthday to Agnes. She deserves it. She's the best. This movie seems to pick up right where the last one left off, because in this one, Gru is extremely caring and protective of all 3 of his girls. He threw this big birthday party for Agnes. Everyone's having fun. Even the minions are here, which is nice. And what better way to introduce them than to have them commit literal gang violence within the first 10 seconds of their appearance. So like I said, Gru is trying to make this party perfect, and part of that involves him dressing up as a fairy princess to put on a show for all the kids. Don't be confused, this moment is actually really heartfelt, but it's also kind of cursed. This reminds me of every single Discord PFP in the official Genshin Impact server. Anyway, we skip a little later in the day now, and Gru is making his dog pee on the neighbor's flowers, proving that Gru still has that supervillain dog in him. Damn, I need a dog like that, dude. The weeds in my yard are getting out of hand. But then, the peeing is cut short when a character named Lucy appears. Gru thinks she's a threat, so they have a quick 1v1. Sadly though, Lucy does get the better of him since she has some sort of lipstick taser thing, and it's just super OP. Just trust me. Okay, you'll see. This thing is overpowered. Gru is now passed out and not waking up anytime soon, so I'm not kidding. Lucy straight up just stuffs him in a trunk and kidnaps him. Two random minions also get involved out of nowhere, but since minions are usually pretty stupid, they don't do much. They just kind of exist. The kidnapping ends up in the water and enters some kind of submarine, which is when we find out that Lucy actually brought Gru to the headquarters of the Anti-Villain League. This is basically just a group of good guys who try to beat up the bad guys. Very complex so far. I know. Basically, the League wants Gru's help for a new case because as an ex-villain, he has a lot of value. And also, everyone just sees him as a good guy now since he returned the moon in the first movie, which, like, I'm gonna be honest, he never actually did return the moon. Okay, the moon just got bigger and I guess flew right back into space on its own. But you know, no one really knows about that part. Now do they? This guy's name is Silas Ramsbottom. He's in charge of everything around here. I won't be talking about him too much since he's honestly not that important, but he does deserve a mention for that last name alone. Ramsbottom? Seriously? Should have just called him like Smash Butt. Or, you know, Thrust Cheeks or something. The case they need Gru's help with has to do with the stolen laboratory at the start of the movie. They explain that this place was devoted to conducting experiments using some kind of special serum that, for a lack of a better term, just makes things go f***ing insane. Oh no. Holy, that looks like a Clash of Clans enemy or something. Anyway, so Gru has to find out who has the serum because obviously injecting people with some sort of bioweapon probably isn't a good thing. I'm looking at you, Elon Musk.
Original gangster.
Lucky for Gru, however, the Anti-Villain League has narrowed the search down to one of the shop owners in the local mall. How convenient. To everyone's surprise, Gru actually declines the work since he's happy just being a father now. And also, turns out he's invested all of his money into creating his very own line of jams and jellies. This kind of comes out of completely nowhere, and I'm not kidding, is a useless fact they bring up multiple times throughout the movie. You'll see, just wait. Anyway, before Gru leaves, Lucy gives him her card. That way he can call if he changes his mind. I'd also like to mention that it's nighttime now, which means Gru most likely left the girls home alone for hours with no one but the minions to watch over them. Don't worry, they're extremely safe. Later that night when he's back home, Gru is talking to the girls before bed when the topic of dating comes up. This is when Gru gets a sudden flashback from his childhood. It's this moment where he asked a girl out but got rejected in front of everyone. I can easily make fun of this scene since Gru just looks kind of goofy, to be honest. But it's also kind of sad because it further proves that Gru was just an outcast growing up. Anyway, the past is the past, so Gru doesn't focus too much on it. It's clear here that Gru's focus is mainly his girls and that he cherishes all their time together. As a new father, he wants to give the girls what he was never given. That being attention and care, which you'd think would be like the two most basic necessities for a child growing up, but that's sadly not always the case. And people wonder why kids are addicted to Skibbity Toilet. That's literally their father figure. That's who's raising them. Goddamn. Anyway, Gru enters his secret lair, which is filled with minions, as usual. But this time around, everyone seems to be working and perfecting this special jelly formula. Again, don't expect a great payoff to the side plot. You will be underwhelmed. One minion falls in a giant batch of this stuff and contaminates all of it, but no one really cares because, I don't know, minions are just insane, dude. Gru and some minions eventually try this new formula, and turns out literally everyone hates it. If you gave this to a newborn baby, it would probably be considered torture. It's that bad. But this is when the movie gets a little sad. You see, Dr. Nefario, who's basically Gru's sidekick, says that he misses doing evil work, so he's decided to get another job. The jelly life just isn't for him, and sometimes it takes 700 hours of Animal Crossing to figure that out. So with that, Dr. Nefario straight up quits, and we get the proper send-off he deserves with some extremely loud fart sounds that were probably taken from Adobe's sound effect library.
Fart con salute!
Why is that so loud? My ears! What the hell? Dr. Nefario makes his official exit at an extremely slow speed, once again proving that he probably plays Mario Kart on 50cc. While this is happening, important to mention that a random minion upstairs just straight up gets abducted. What could anyone possibly want with a brainless yellow marshmallow that can barely communicate? I don't know, maybe they need a punching bag or something? I honestly have no idea. The next day now, and the girls are up to some shenanigans, you see they all really want to have a mom, and they can tell Gru is a little lonely at times, so they decide to make Gru an online dating profile. They use a website called createadate.net, which when you visit the URL yourself, just doesn't exist anymore. So chances are this is probably just some phishing site that the girls use to get scammed. They probably just downloaded like 13 viruses on the family laptop. Well done. However, this scene is when we get some of the most iconic Gru pictures of all time. Seriously, some of these are hilarious, and actually in the movie, they're great. Gru finds out about what's going on really quickly, and again, gets immediately awkward because he's never texted a woman a day in his life, probably. But that whole scene was just for the memes, because now is when Gru is going to the mall where all the suspects are located. Gru took the job in helping the Anti-Villain Villain League, by the way. I think I forgot to mention that. He's doing it. He enters this cupcake shop, which acts as a cover, since this whole mission is meant to be like an undercover type thing. It's also a two-person type thing, apparently, because Lucy, the girl from earlier, is actually joining Gru on this mission. The League randomly paired these two up together. Surely their relationship will be strictly professional for the remainder of this movie. A little more info about Lucy now. Despite what you might initially think, she's described as a goofy, enthusiastic, and cheerful person. She's kind of dumb sometimes, but also always ends up getting the job done. Think someone like Deadpool if he was only allowed to make PG jokes. And also, she dances like a Fortnite character. There's also this moment where one of the minions daydreams about kissing Lucy, which is kind of weird considering the minions are apparently 2 to 4 billion years old. I'll explain that later. It gets pretty weird. This random guy walks in out of nowhere. He's one of the other shop owners in the mall. He's very big and stands out a lot. I wonder if he'll be important at all. After introducing himself, he leaves, and Gru immediately says that he recognizes him as an evil villain called El Macho. Back in the day, El Macho was one of the toughest guys out there until he supposedly died while air surfing on a shark while 250 pounds of dynamite was strapped to his chest and blew up as he entered a hole in an erupting volcano. What is this, ChatGPT? How do you even think of something like that?
Sounds like El Macho's pretty dead.
They never found the body.
They probably wouldn't find a body if it was true. Like, the dude blew up in a volcano. Later that night, and Gru is helping Agnes rehearse some lines for some sort of Mother's Day show, whatever that means. This is obviously just a setup for Agnes to get really sad about not having a mother again. Gru is very lonely, and the girls just want a mom. Whatever will they do? I'm about to cry. A bit after, and the minions are having some huge party, because what else is there to do if you're trapped in the basement all day? Which is when Gru calls 2 of them by name to follow him upstairs. I'm not sure how Gru can tell who's who, if I'm being honest. Sure, some of the minions look a little different, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of minions that look the exact same. This is when 2 completely different minions who are outside get abducted as well out of nowhere, never to be seen again. And now you might be thinking that this movie isn't anything too crazy yet. It just seems like your average cartoon for now, but I swear, okay, things get crazy later, and the lore behind it is actually insane. So now Gru magically TPs to the mall with Lucy, which is when they break into El Macho's shop to find some clues. Speeding through this, they don't actually find anything and just end up having to run away with the help of some minions, but not before hitting El Macho with a car at 80 miles per hour.
Excuse me, what the actual
The next day, and there's this ice cream truck nearby, so naturally all the minions trample over some kids and try to buy some ice cream. Sadly though, this is straight up just another kidnapping, this time in broad daylight. This is getting a little creepy now. There's a lot of minions missing, and like an ice cream truck abduction is a little wild, so I won't lie. Back to Gru and Lucy, and they're investigating another shop in the mall, since El Macho's place didn't have anything of note, really. But before they do, turns out the girls are actually here and get to meet Lucy for the very first time. They're all pretty excited, since I guess she's a potential mother to them or something. We get this one line from Agnes, which I'm pretty sure is inspired by every Valorant player when they have a girl on their team.
Are you single?
During these brief moments, Lucy notices just how much of a caring person Gru actually is, at least when it comes to his girls. But now it's time to focus on the mission, so Gru goes undercover into another shop, which is when we find out that Gru actually has a horribly uncurable disease. Turns out Gru is bald. Disgusting. I know.
You are bald. And that is bad.
The shop he enters is some sort of wig shop, I think. The dude who owns it is obsessed with hair. He's got a bald eagle next to him, which is ironic. Gru looks around the shop for clues and actually ends up almost finding something. But then 2 of the 3 girls show up and let Gru know that Margot is actually on a date with a boy. I guess earlier the girls were hanging out and some random guy came up to Margot and asked her out or something. That's her name, by the way. She's named Margot. I don't think I mentioned that one time in the first video. Because of this news, Gru activates his overprotective dad mode immediately and leaves the shop to find Margot. Eventually he does find her in where else but El Macho's shop, which is actually a restaurant, turns out. Not only that, but the boy who's talking to Margot is actually El Macho's son. So there's some more conflict for you.
My dream is to one day play video games for a living.
Bro just wants to play RuneScape or something. I respect it. Anyway, turns out El Macho's family is having a big Cinco de Mayo party soon, and so Gru and his family are all invited to show up and wear like a guacamole hat or something. I don't know, I've never been to one. Also, I want to point out a little clever moment in the writing real quick. I was going to mention how the use of Cinco de Mayo and Mother's Day contradict each other in this story, since if the dates don't line up, it wouldn't make any sense. It was going to be a good gotcha moment where I seem really smart, but as fate would have it, the 2 days are actually very close to each other, so it makes perfect sense for them to both be mentioned. GG Illumination, you win this time. Gru is back home now, and I should let you know there's this reoccurring bit that I haven't mentioned yet. Essentially, this one girl that Gru knows has been trying to hook him up with one of her friends. Gru has been uninterested up until this point, but for some reason, at this point in the movie, he caves and goes on a date with this random girl. Later that night, he's on the date back at the mall. There's a lot of time skips in this movie, and they just keep going back and forth between the mall and the house. It's pretty annoying, I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, the date goes about as good as you'd expect, which is to say, not at all. Lucy randomly shows up and ends up shooting Gru's date with a sleep dart. She must be a Bloons Tower Defense Pro or something. This sleep leads Gru to ditching his date and hanging out with Lucy for the night. The two share some moments of vulnerability with one another. It gets kind of deep and it's honestly kind of cute. And then the night ends with Lucy giving Gru a little kiss on the cheek. How adorable. We then get a montage of Gru being the happiest man alive since he finally found a woman who seems to be interested in him. It's like he unboxed 2 knives in a row on CS2. He's in a super good mood now. But the happiness is cut short, however, because going back to the mall now, and turns out the anti-villain league found some serum in the hair guy's shop. So the mission now is technically complete, which means Lucy will be getting transferred to Australia. There's really no reason for her to specifically be transferred to Australia other than like it's really far away. So once again, El Bozo plus no women plus never happy plus big nose. Gru does get to talk to Lucy before she leaves, which is pretty awkward, I won't lie. They both fail to say how they really feel towards one another. In a final act of appreciation, Lucy gives Gru her lipstick taser, which is the thing she used on him at the very beginning of the movie.
Bye, Gru.
Bro, if they kissed, wouldn't Gru's nose just like poke her in the eye or something? So now Gru is pretty sad because he just lost the love of his life that he just met like 1 week ago or something. It's very similar to how he felt towards the girls in the first movie. Gru has to overcome his childhood fear so he can properly accomplish what he desperately desires, that being an intimate relationship in this case. This is when we skip to the minions now. Turns out after all the kidnappings, they've been brought to this tropical resort thing, I guess. Some are tanning, some are enjoying some music, and some are choosing to get naked. For some reason, it's just you and the boys. Who cares? While relaxing, one of them gets sucked into the water because this isn't an actual tropical island, but some sort of simulation inside of a giant bubble. We end up seeing 2 minions tied up to a chair and being injected with the serum from the beginning, turning them into these weird purple monsters. So now, instead of being dumb and yellow, they're aggressive and purple. It's like they put all their stats into anger or something. We'll get back to that later though, because it's now time for the Gru family to attend the Cinco de Mayo party. It's all fun and games until El Macho's son tries to rizz up Margot. Gru doesn't really like this, but like every Reddit user who has uncontrollable acne, he just can't stop it from happening. There's this quick dance sequence and then Gru's all sad and alone at the table. He also straight up has a guacamole hat. Let me know if this is a real thing. It feels very impractical. This is when Gru decides to follow El Macho into a secret room since he still believes El Macho to be the main bad guy despite not finding any proof earlier. I'm not going to drag this out. Gru was 100% right in his assumption. El Macho was up to everything. He framed the hair guy from earlier. Case closed. Gru has a massive brain. You'd think here that El Macho is a little more hostile than he is, but turns out that he actually asks Gru to join him on his evil plan. You see, El Macho kind of admires Gru a little bit, and this is when we get the big reveal, and when I'm finally going to try to explain what's really going on here. El Macho shows off that he's been kidnapping the minions and injecting them with some serum so they become these indestructible evil zombies, essentially. He shows off how he's got hundreds, maybe even thousands of them in cages, ready to go. This honestly kind of makes no sense, since he also shows one of them eating a literal police car, so like they could definitely just break free from these cages if they wanted to. Those bars aren't doing anything, I'm gonna be honest. But you might be asking to yourself why he wanted the minions to begin with. Like, sure, there's a million of them, but why the minions specifically? All right. Here we go. A big question I had in my first video was asking what the minions even are. They're obviously not human, so what could they possibly be? Well, although I don't know the exact answer, from my understanding, they're these weird yellow critters that spawned in randomly a long time ago. As far as I know, their main purpose throughout history has been to find the most evil person on the planet and serve them throughout their journey. This is why El Macho wants them and why they're with Gru right now. But this is also why there's a widely accepted theory that the minions are just f***ing insane. You see, if they always seek out the most evil person in the world, that means at one point in time, and bear with me, they probably serve people like fascist dictators and evil terrorists. I know this is obviously just a little internet haha, but if you choose to believe it because it actually is backed up by the official lore, it means that most of the minions have probably committed multiple war crimes. They definitely do actual bad things in these movies, like instinctively beat each other and have no care for anyone's safety. And listen, at the end of the day, you can believe what you want, okay? It's just a movie. I just think it's funny that every child wearing a minion shirt is just secretly supporting some sort of terrorist organization. Like, isn't that a real world plot twist? Minions are actually like a hate symbol or something. Anyway, after the big reveal, Gru basically says, no, I don't want to join you, and then leaves. During this, Margot is also really sad because El Macho's son is dancing with another girl now, so that plotline kind of went nowhere at all. After they leave the party, who else but Lucy shows up. Turns out on her way to Australia, Lucy realized that she had feelings for Gru, so I'm not kidding, she decided to jump out of the plane mid-flight. Also, during her realization, there's this funny scene where she starts seeing Gru's face everywhere. It got a good chuckle out of me, I won't lie.
I just did a boom boom.
Yeah, that would be pretty annoying on a plane, I think. She has no idea about what just happened with all the minions and stuff, so she gets lured into a trap later that day, and Dr. Nefario actually calls Gru, further warning him about what's gonna happen and about what happened to Lucy. Turns out Nefario was working with El Macho this whole time, by the way, but he like regrets it now because he's a bad guy, but not really that bad. So also, Dr. Nefario calling here kind of makes no sense because then Gru leaves to go save Lucy, but at the same time, Dr. Nefario shows up in Gru's basement to save the girls from some purple minion or something. Like, why call him if you were going to show up at the house 2 minutes later? That's kind of weird. Whatever. Gru goes back to El Macho's house, which is when things go really badly and he's about to die. But then Dr. Nefario, the minions, and the girls all show up to save the day. I guess Dr. Nefario just has an antidote that'll change all the minions back to normal. By the way, the big jelly payoff of this movie that I mentioned is that Dr. Nefario mixed the antidote with the large amount of jelly that Gru had made at the very beginning of the movie. This part kind of tricks you into thinking the whole jelly thing had a purpose, but if I'm being honest, you could have just definitely mixed the antidote with like water or something, or just like deliver it raw. Not sure why it has to be mixed with anything at all. It just seems kind of random, if I'm being honest. Anyway, it's super epic. The girls and everyone else turn the minions back to level 1. We get one final standoff between Gru and El Macho, which is when we not only see Lucy, who's attached to a shark covered in explosives, referencing that one El Macho story back at the beginning, but we also see El Macho himself take some of the purple serum, so he turns into some giant beast thing. That's a pretty ballsy move, to be honest. Not sure he thought this one through. Anyway, you might be thinking this is going to be some crazy fight scene, but instead, Gru remembers he was given the most OP item in any movie ever. Remember? I told you guys that. He uses the lipstick taser on him, and El Macho immediately dies or something, and the day is saved. There's this bit at the end where Lucy and Gru are actually about to die in a volcano, but they just jump in the water and everything is fine. Then, 147 dates later, which is like probably 2 years or something, Gru and Lucy get married, so now Gru is very happy, and so are the girls. Oh, are they gonna have trouble kissing? Oh, see? I said it. I said, he poked her in the eye! I called it. There's also this weird bit where Agnes says the speech she was practicing earlier in the movie for Mother's Day. We established that a good amount of time has passed since then, so did Agnes remember this random speech from school for over like 2 years or something? I don't know, it's cute regardless, I guess. And that was the movie, Despicable Me 2. Is it that bad? Honestly, with the amount of slander I saw in the comment section, I thought it'd be worse. I definitely don't think it was as good as the first movie, but it's still not really even that bad. The ending is kind of weird because the whole movie, these girls really want a mother, and instead of learning from that impulse, they just add Lucy in the mix and are like, yep, you guys have a mom now. Like there could have been a message about learning to appreciate what you have as opposed to always wanting more or something. But again, it's still not really that bad. Learning that the minions are basically the most evil living beings on the planet and destined to be enslaved forever is pretty wild, but I guess that's just part of the fun. All in all, good movie. Would recommend. Our adventure begins with the Illumination classic. A bunch of exposition cleverly hidden by a random guy directly telling us everything we need to know. Basically, there was this child actor named Balthazar Brat. Back in the day, he was super popular and on TV all the time, but once he hit puberty, his show got canceled because no one in the world thinks acne is cute. Because of this, bro actually fell off and decided to become this evil villain in retaliation to the world because, you know, they like hate him now or something. If this seems kind of deep so far, trust me, it's not as interesting as I make it sound.
What are you looking at?
Why is he getting mad? Doesn't he want to be famous still? Isn't that the whole point? We then skip ahead to present time, which is when we see Balthazar being super evil and attempting to steal a giant diamond. I've always wondered why villains in movies always steal stuff like notable art pieces and like giant diamonds and stuff. Because like, how do you sell this thing? Does it actually have any value if you get reported the second you try to sell it to someone? Anyway, 2 important things you need to know about Balthazar Brat. 1, his whole thing is that he's stuck in the 80s, I guess. His entire aesthetic is based around 80s fashion, and every time he does literally anything, there's a nostalgic song that plays, which probably costs Universal way too much money to license, let's be honest. And 2, he's voiced by Trey Parker, who's not only one of the creators of the show South Park, but he also voices many of its characters, one of which being Randy Marsh, and every time he speaks in this movie, that's all I hear. So,
Playing a villain, I'm a noob. Heist music, that is final!
So Michael Jackson starts playing and Balthazar hijacks the ship to steal a giant diamond. He's taking the guards out with his forever growing bubblegum. It's a little weird, just go with it. This is when Gru and Lucy are deployed to stop him. Turns out Gru and Lucy both continue to work for the Anti-Villain League, which was established in the last movie. Watch my video on that if you want a banger, it's great, just trust me. They're both going really fast in these speedy submarines. Some minions are following behind, and out of nowhere they end up hitting a clownfish underwater, making it lose one of its fins.
Mission failed. We'll get him next time.
You might think this is a direct reference to Nemo because, you know, he's got like a f***ed up fin. But I like to imagine it's actually a reference to Nemo's mother, who we all know just straight up dies. It's the minions who killed her, guys. Don't fact check it. The Minion Nemo theory about to be a crazy video. Look at this thumbnail. It's so white.
What did you call us? Brucey, you know, Gru and
Oh god. I feel like Grucy means something completely different nowadays. Anyway, Balthazar finally got a hold of the diamond and is about to get away, but obviously he has no idea who he's messing with. Because need I remind you, Gru has taken down supervillain juggernauts such as slightly overweight Mexican guy and Daddy's Money dorky guy. What a resume. I'm impressed. The two face off on the ship, which is now floating across the city due to the expanding bubblegum I mentioned earlier. They whip out some guns and eventually Gru shoots Balthazar point blank with a Glock and wins the fight. Obviously I'm kidding. There's no real guns in this movie, just nudity. The two fight for a bit to some more 80s music, which is when Gru straight up punches Balthazar in the face. But sadly, Gru hasn't worked out in a while, so Balthazar gets back up almost immediately and uses his magical keyboard weapon to blow all of Gru's clothes off. And yes, we see his butt. Balthazar is forced to run away, however, since the reinforcements showed up, but at least Gru secured the diamond, which is the whole point of the mission, right? Well, skipping a little later now, Gru and Lucy are at the Anti-Villain League headquarters, which is when we see Silas Ramsbottom again. I didn't have to look his name up, I remembered it from the last video. This part is kind of weird because Silas is talking to all the agents and is basically like, hey guys, I'm retiring right now, so here's your new boss. She's gonna be really annoying. Enjoy. Much like the last movie, the character of the Anti-Villain League boss is like super underutilized here, so like none of this actually matters. But congratulations to Silas Ramsbottom for having a goated name despite being extremely forgettable. The new boss, who I'm not even gonna bother naming because like she literally doesn't matter in the story, gets really mad at Gru because I guess he let Balthazar get away earlier. Even though he protected the diamond, which was probably more important, this new girl doesn't care and just straight up fires Gru in front of everyone. Because Lucy is a ride or die, she stands up for Gru and she gets fired too. How unfortunate. Yep, it's the Microsoft mentality. Fire everyone. Who cares? Let them go. Later that night, Gru and Lucy return home and are surprised by their three girls. The girls prepared some sort of late night dinner because they're goated and love their parents. But despite the wonderfully cooked food that everyone would love to eat, the dinner is cut short because Gru gets a phone call from a minion named Mel and has to go downstairs to check up on him. Once there, the minions are hype as hell because they just love this guy. They think he's Jesus or something. That is, until Gru gets into an argument with the minions about being a villain versus being a hero. The minions explain that they want to be evil again because being good is very, very boring. Just ask Hawkeye. I don't think this guy has ever smiled once. The argument goes on and on for a bit. The minions want to be evil. Gru wants to be good. They argue in the language that people tell me is called Minionese. I think I had people get mad at me for calling the minion language gibberish in the last video. People were letting me know this is a real language, which it's not, but it does exist in this movie, so you got me there, I guess. Anyway, Gru refuses to be bad again, so the minions straight up quit and decide to find a new leader to serve for the rest of eternity. For some reason, there's these two random minions that decide to stay. Not sure why they're the only ones, but yeah, these two stay with Gru. This is when we skip to a location in Paris, which you might recognize as the place John Wick fights in. Funny how they took that idea straight out of John Wick. It's a John Wick reference, guys. John Wick invented Paris. Anyway, I'm gonna skip through this next scene because it's kind of weird. Basically, this museum called in a diamond expert to check on the giant diamond from earlier because they think it might be a fake for some reason. The diamond checker is checking it out, but actually the whole thing is a lie, and this big guy who's meant to be the diamond expert is actually just Balthazar in costume. He takes everyone out with a Barrett 50 cal and then steals the diamond and runs away. Also during this scene, Balthazar throws a boogie bomb from Fortnite and the song Take On Me starts playing because it was released in the 80s, and that's like the only criteria for this movie's soundtrack. Skipping back to Gru and Lucy, and they're both pretty depressed at the moment after losing their jobs. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but the animation feels a little off in this movie. I don't really know much about animation, but as far as I can tell, it seems like the same style as the last two installments. It just looks different to me. I'm not sure why. Maybe I'm going crazy or something. The next day now, and Gru is outside in his pajamas because he's unemployed and probably playing World of Warcraft all day. This is when some random dude shows up and has some pretty important news for Gru. But in typical introvert fashion, Gru wants none of it, so I'm not kidding, he decides to blow this guy up, like, with an explosion. Oh my god. Well, that's definitely like 7 casualties right there. Despite being blown up, the random dude is still alive, and he lets Gru know that he and his family have actually been invited to a country called Fredonia by his long-lost twin brother. Gru laughs this off because obviously he doesn't have a twin brother. What is this, a show on TLC or something? But just to make sure, he decides to visit his mother and ask her if it's true. I'm not kidding here. Gru asks her and she immediately caves and admits that, yep, Gru, you have a twin brother. He's real. I guess when the mom and dad separated, they each took one of the children and decided to never speak to each other ever again. Honestly, that's probably got to be the worst way to handle a divorce probably ever. But with the news that the twin brother is real, the Gru family... Wait, what's Gru's last name, actually? Wait, his last name is Gru? You're telling me I've been calling this dude by his last name the whole time and never knew? That's weird. The Gru family accepts the invitation and arrives at their destination. You can tell Gru is all excited because he honestly just wants a friend, I think. This scene happens really quick. They enter the twin brother's mansion, and there he is, in all his glory. Oh god, he's got long blonde hair! That's actually hilarious. This is Gru's brother, Drew. So I guess his name is Drew Gru? I don't know. Don't think about it too much, I guess. He's instantly recognizable because he has long blonde hair. I guess Gru got the bad RNG in this family. Drew is super excited to see everyone, and he seems super genuine, honestly. He's exactly like Gru, except he's actually happy sometimes. Everyone introduces themselves, and then the show wastes no time in splitting everyone up. Gru and Drew are gonna spend some twin time together, while Lucy and the girls go visit the town and see what it's all about, or something. There's this entire subplot about how Lucy just really wants to be a good mother towards these girls, by the way, because she just doesn't feel like she is, for some reason. The girls never really really show any coldness towards Lucy, so I don't really understand where this is coming from. Following the girl Gru, while they're in town, Margot accidentally proposes to some boy, kind of. It's complicated, just trust me, we'll get to it later. Edith and Agnes enter a bar because it has a unicorn on it, and Agnes loves unicorns. Not sure why they were let into this bar when they're clearly like 6 years old or something. Maybe the business is just really struggling. I don't know. While they're in this bar, some dude tells Agnes that there are real unicorns in the forest nearby. Agnes gets really excited for a minute, and then Lucy finally shows up and decides to kill everyone. During all that, Drew shows Gru what the family business is really all about. Turns out Gru's father was one of the greatest villains of all time. Like father, like son. How adorable. Sadly though, I think Gru's father actually passed away a while ago, so this is like super sad. The two talk for a bit, and they find out that the mother never approved of Gru, and the father apparently never approved of Drew. Again, these two are basically the same character, except for the hair. This is when we find out why Gru was invited here in the first place. Turns out Drew wants to carry his dad's legacy, so he contacted Gru to help him become an evil villain.
Teach me the art of villainy. No.
Actually, no. Get good, idiots. I'm not helping you. Gru doesn't want to be a villain, so he declines, but not before Drew tries to persuade him with a sweet, speedy car ride.
Holy moly.
Gru caves and gives it a shot, because fast car equals men happy. They ride around for a bit in a wacky cartoon way. Drew steals some lollipops halfway through, and then they both drive away from the police thanks to Gru's expert villainous tactics. This kinda sorta gives Gru the itch to be a villain again, but he still needs a little bit more convincing. Also, during these scenes, there's even more stuff happening elsewhere. We cut to Balthazar at one point, and he's being nostalgic about himself and talking about how he wants to destroy Hollywood for betraying him. That's like a whole scene that happens. There's also the minions who are just aimlessly walking around until they somehow end up on the stage of the Sing competition show. That's another Illumination movie that I haven't watched. I'm guessing it's like American Idol or something. No. Because they're randomly on stage, the minions sing for almost 2 minutes that I'll never get back, and eventually they end up getting arrested. While in prison, they surprisingly take over the whole place because they're alphas, I guess. I thought the minions' whole thing was that they serve people, but for some reason here they decide they want to be in charge out of nowhere. None of this really matters. The only thing of note really is that Mel, the leader of the minions, so to speak, realizes that being in prison kind of sucks a lot and misses being home with Gru. It's cool being a villain, but getting kisses on the forehead from Gru is a lot cooler. So just to recap real quick, we have the whole Drew and Gru being evil story, the Lucy wanting to be a mom story, the Margot getting engaged story, the Edith and Agnes finding a unicorn story, the minions being in prison story, and the Balthazar destroying Hollywood story. On top of that, Silas was replaced at the beginning for some reason, which might play into it, maybe. There's just a lot here. I'm not sure why they decided to spread themselves so thin, because honestly, I'm extremely overwhelmed. So Drew finally convinces Gru to be evil with him, except not really in the way that you might think. Basically, Gru agrees to go on a heist mission with his brother because he wants to steal the diamond back off of Balthazar and return it to the anti-villain league, thus hopefully getting his job back. Drew is super hyped about this because he doesn't actually know about the anti-villain league part. He just thinks this is an evil thing that they're doing together. See, that's why we have two random minions to stay with Gru. God forbid we have a scene without minions involved. The next day now, and we're gonna speedrun through these side plot resolutions, if you even want to call them that. The boy who wants to marry Margot gets rejected thanks to Lucy somehow. That way Margot can avoid getting married altogether, and Lucy proves her value as a mother or something. Edith and Agnes go in the forest completely alone. Remember, they're kids. This is weird. They find a unicorn and get really hyped, but actually it ends up just being a goat with a missing horn. It's all very epic. But back to the main story. This is when we skip to Gru and Drew, who put on these super weird black and white suits ahead of their planned heist. They get to Balthazar's house, which is basically a tower with a giant Rubik's Cube on top. The Rubik's Cube was actually invented in the 70s, so it's a little inconsistent with the whole 80s shtick that this guy's got going on. Doesn't really matter though, who cares? Gru and Drew climb the tower from the outside. There's this moment where Drew narrowly avoids death. It's super silly.
I'm okay.
During the entering of the tower, you can really see Gru shine as a villain. He knows all the ins and outs of sneaking into places, whereas Drew is just kind of in the way most of the time. Drew really starts to admire Gru for this, and it's actually kind of sweet to see. I don't know, I thought it was nice. Eventually, the two find the diamond, and it's actually being held in that moment by Balthazar himself. I'm not gonna lie, the first time I watched this movie, I really thought Drew was gonna be Balthazar in disguise. We just never saw them both in the same place at the same time, so I thought it'd be like a clever twist or something. We saw how good Balthazar was at dressing up earlier, and I thought that would play into a bigger part of the movie, to be honest. Balthazar gets up and walks away, so the twins chase him down, which is when we see Balthazar has a giant mech of himself straight out of Neon Genesis Evangelion. The two then get caught because Drew is stupid enough to chew some gum that was laying around, which we established earlier just grows forever. Thankfully though, it's also because of this gum that the two can steal the diamond back and get away safely.
Give me back my diamond!
That's just BM, dude, shaking it in front of him like that, like it's an Amazon gift card or something. The two are actually about to fall to their deaths before escaping, but Lucy shows up out of nowhere and saves both of them. We also get this one frame where Gru has huge eyes and looks scared for his life. I don't know why, I just find his face really funny here. This is when Drew finds out about Gru's true intentions to return the diamond back to the anti-villain league. Drew isn't too happy about it, but womp womp, what are you gonna do? Again, I thought this would lead to some crazy Drew villain arc where he ends up being the main antagonist the whole time, but no, that doesn't happen at all. During this scene, by the way, I guess the minions built some flying aircraft and escaped the prison and are now flying into the void, forever searching for a new leader. What is the point of this? So now the Gru family is ready to head back home because they got what they wanted. Lucy leads the girls to the airplane, but then, actually, a huge plot twist because Balthazar does use his Master of Disguise skills to dress up as Lucy and steal the diamond back for a second time. Gru ends up finding the real Lucy tied up in a broom closet, while Balthazar now has the diamond and the girls with him in the airplane to get back home. Because Gru and Lucy have no way to catch up to him, Gru decides to apologize to his brother Drew, and I guess they kind of just make up right away. They both say sorry, and that argument from earlier basically means nothing because they love each other again. How cute. Balthazar is actually headed towards Hollywood to destroy everything. Gru, Drew, and Lucy are not far behind, and the minions also somehow get involved when they see Gru flying into Hollywood. They like randomly see him fly, so they decide to turn around and follow him, because at the end of the day, all they really want are those goddamn forehead kisses. So warm, so sweet. Balthazar is now in Hollywood with his giant mech that he's controlling. The girls are also in this thing for some reason. I'm not sure why Balthazar cares about them that much, but he does. Not the sign! No! Come on, dude. Hall. On top of putting expanding bubblegum everywhere, Balthazar also shoots his huge laser in the middle of the city. I guess he needed the diamond to power this laser or something. I think I missed that part, to be honest. So he's destroying the entire city now, but thankfully before he can get to it, Lucy saves the girls while Gru and Drew take Balthazar out. Gru gets one tapped in the head, so he needs to get revived, which is when it's all up to Drew to save the day. This is super epic. I wonder if he'll pull it off. I mean, obviously he does, because that's like what main characters do. Drew destroys the mech from the inside, and then Gru wakes up and fights Balthazar in a 1v1 on Nuketown. There's more 80s music that's playing because it's mandatory as per the official Despicable Me 3 contract. Gru steals Balthazar's weapon and just kind of beats him with it, I guess, really quick. The minions finally show up and pop all the bubbles so they don't actually expand forever, and I guess that's pretty much it. The day is saved, the town is saved, and the Gru family is finally all back together. We don't really see what happens to Balthazar. He just like flies away, I think. We then skip back home where we see Agnes finally calling Lucy mom, which is actually kind of cute. Gru and Lucy return the diamond, probably, although the whole anti-villain league thing becomes an afterthought in the end, like we don't even hear about them. Drew, I guess, lives with them now and has allied himself with the minions because they all want to be super evil together, but it's played off like in a playful way. So the movie ends with Drew and the minions flying off to go cause some mayhem, while Gru and Lucy plan on chasing them down since they're heroes again.
He's my brother! We'll give him a 5-minute head start.
Oh, they're back, dude. I just got chills. And that was the movie, Despicable Me 3. I had a lot of people telling me that this movie was extremely bad and one of Illumination's worst, but honestly, I kind of had fun with it. Don't get me wrong, it's a cluttered mess and there's way too much stuff happening at once to be a cohesive story, but it's also just a kid's movie and not that deep. So I can see why some people would put this on in the background while they do something else, and I can also see why most people enjoy the first two movies a lot more. Maybe the fourth one is better than this? I don't know. We'll have to see and find out when I watch it eventually. At the end of the day, I'm just a guy, and this is just a video I made by myself about a movie that I watched. That's it. This movie begins with the Illumination classic. 8 minutes straight of a random voiceover periodically dumping exposition. Seriously, I did the math, and this opening segment that's narrated the entire time equates to over 10% of this movie's total runtime. We're off to a thrilling start. In this opening, we learn about the very beginning of the minions. I guess they started off as these tiny yellow underwater things. Eventually, they evolved and got bigger, which allowed them to live on land.
Oh, that one is Norbert. He's an idiot.
One of the first lines in this entire movie is calling the minions stupid. How poetic is that? The minions don't age, and they're basically invincible to any sort of physical harm, so they're all at least 66 million years old and will basically live forever. These facts cause a lot of inconsistencies in the narrative of this story, and I'll be bringing them up multiple times. It's explained that the minions only have one goal as a species, and that's to serve the most despicable master they could find. So like they find this T-Rex and he's evil, I guess, so now they follow him around. They basically just follow the most evil person in the world at that moment. Eventually the dinosaurs die out, so the minions start serving cavemen and eventually historical figures who were known to be not the greatest people. We're talking Egyptian pharaohs that utilized slavery, famous vampires that lured and killed hundreds of innocent people, and even Napoleon Bonaparte, who we all know is French. In the story, the minions find a cave and stay in it for over 150 years, until one day they randomly get bored and want to find another evil person to serve forever. I read online that the reason the minions were written to be in a cave for so long is because the writers wanted to avoid the minions working for a certain Austrian painter during a war, maybe, which is totally valid, I get it. But did the writers forget about all the other evil people throughout all the other periods of history? Like, there's a lot of them, and they did some really bad things. Anyway, so like I said, the minions got bored one day, so 3 of them set out to go find the world's most evil person. These 3 minions being Kevin, Stuart, and Bob, the boys.
Ah, okay. Tomato la pita de la poca.
I have no idea what he's saying. I feel like I'm going insane already watching this. So with that, we get a quick montage showcasing the journey of these 3 minions. It's a visually beautiful sequence, so a reminder that you can say what you want, but Illumination's animation has always been top tier, okay? It's always been. Eventually, our boys end up in New York City, because of course they do. It's always like New York or California in these movies. There's literally no one landing in Delaware or something. Eventually, the minions steal some clothes, which end up being their super iconic denim overalls. When they find them, they're already in the perfect size, which is weird. No child is shaped like this, but whatever. We then get another montage showcasing the minions living the American dream. Because we're in the 60s now, we see the minions join a hippie protest, we see them fall in love with music for the very first time, and perhaps the most American part of all, we see one of them get stuffed in a trunk and kidnapped. This is a certified land of the free moments. Eventually, our 3 minions reconnect and end up going to some fancy mall, where we're all reminded that the minions are very stupid. Oh god, Bob, wake up! You've been in a coma for 13 years, your family misses you so much. So despite them all being closed now, I guess security guards just aren't a thing for some reason. So our 3 minions set up a TV next to a bed so they can spend the night relaxing. They change the channel a couple times because they just can't decide on what to watch. But eventually, they somehow end up watching the Secret Villain Network channel. If these 3 can find this channel on accident, I'm pretty sure the authorities can find it on purpose, but I digress. On this channel, there's talks about VillainCon, which is basically just Comic-Con, but everyone attending has committed multiple felonies. So yeah, it's exactly like Comic-Con, actually. The main attraction of this event is someone named Scarlet Overkill. She's the super evil villain who's looking for some new henchmen.
There's a new bad man in town, and that man is a woman.
Obviously, the minions get excited by this, so they decide VillainCon in Florida is their next stop. They leave the store, and apparently it's still daytime outside, so like, why was it just really dark inside? Are there no windows in this building? And like, why did the store even close in the first place? There was a lot of people shopping here earlier, and it turns out it's midday, so that's kind of weird. But then, turns out the minions have a serious problem because they actually have no idea how to get to Florida. There's a scene where they talk to fire hydrants and babies because that's a silly thing to do, and these guys are like super silly. Oh, look at me, I dance, but don't f with them because they'll start a civil war. Eventually, the minions decide to hitchhike on the highway because this is the 60s and Netflix hadn't made all the serial killer documentaries yet. This is when we get a shot that I just think is kind of funny for some reason. It's one of the minions holding a sign that says Orlando. I don't know why, I just think out of context, the screenshot is hilarious. Like it looks AI generated or something? I don't know, man. My brain is cooked. I won't lie to you. Eventually, a family does pick them up, and turns out they're also headed to Florida because they're also all villains. They even decide to rob a bank real quick on the way. It's a fun time.
Okay, Nelsons, let's do this.
Potakino?
He's like, what the f is going on? Also, I forgot to mention, but we've been checking in on all the other minions throughout the movie. They've basically just been really bored, and that's honestly kind of it. This is a cool reference to my girlfriend, who can't watch any movie over 2 hours long without unironically playing Subway Surfers on her phone. But eventually, our boys do arrive at the convention in Florida. The entrance to this thing is a little shack, but then you actually go underground, and it's super nice and stuff. It's like that one Zombies map with the train that moves around, where like the power is in a shack or whatever. I hated that map. But yeah, they're at VillainCon now, is what I'm saying. The minions walk around for a bit. We see a young Dr. Nefario in the background, which is kind of cool. We also see some random villain kill one of his clones. That's probably very unethical or something. But luckily they got there just in time because it's now time for Scarlet Overkill. She's making her grand entrance and she's got a whole arena filled up for this. So she's probably pretty popular. I was actually pretty curious about her, so I ended up Googling her previous crimes. And turns out she's done grand larceny, death threats, terrorism, high treason, attempted genocide, attempted mass murder, treason, kidnapping, destruction of property, assault and battery, and unlawful imprisonment, to name a few. The minions are basically in love with her because she's super evil, which is when Scarlet makes a speech about how she's a woman and proved all the men wrong. I guess she's the first proper woman villain or something. I know some people would get triggered by this scene, but she actually does seem pretty threatening and very smart, so I don't know. It's cool. I dig it. Scarlet pulls out this big diamond and basically tells everyone in the arena that the person who's able to steal it from her will become her henchman. This is obviously a horrible idea because every villain just starts storming the stage immediately. Imagine if Taylor Swift mid-concert was like, hey guys, I'm giving out free free hugs right now. Come get them. You know, a bunch of funky looking dudes tackle Scarlet down, but I guess she has her ultimate ready, so she just pushes everyone away by pressing Q on her keyboard. This is when we find out that the minions actually got a hold of the diamond, albeit it looks like it was on accident. One of them just swallows the diamond during the chaos, and I guess now they have the diamond or something. These guys are millions of years old and still dumb as a bag of rocks. It's actually insane. So the minions are officially declared Scarlet's new henchmen, and then everyone starts cheering because everyone here is an evil person, but they also love to see others succeed, I guess. The next shot is everyone arriving at Scarlet's house. Turns out she lives in England, which you can easily identify not by the famous clock tower, but by the extremely dirty water and horrible weather. It's actually really nice out in this shot, but I've heard it rains all the time over there, so I don't know, yeah. Once at the house, Scarlet is really nice to the minions. She's clearly kind of a softie, at least so far. This is when we're introduced to Herb, who's her husband, I think. I don't really know, but they seem kind of in love. Now's probably a good time to mention that Scarlet and Herb are voice acted by mega famous actors Sandra Bullock and John Hamm, respectively. I'm sure the people who casted this movie thought that would be a memorable factoid about it, but I'll be honest, all anyone remembers about this movie is the minions. Who would have thought? Herb is that annoying stoner type. He's just a bro with everyone he comes across. Honestly, he's kind of a cool character, but generally speaking, having a comic relief character in a movie centered around much more notable comic relief characters isn't the best idea. This is when Scarlet tells the three minions her big plan. Essentially, she wants to steal the crown off the Queen of England. She actually specifically name drops Queen Elizabeth, which I thought was kind of weird. I guess the royal family is canon in this universe, although I'd have to assume Prince Andrew is excluded from this, since if he wasn't, the minions would probably end up serving him in one of the movies. Herb then gives our three boys some cool gadgets to help them on their journey. One of them gets a cool mechanical arm that can stretch real far. Another gets a lava lamp gun that like burns stuff, I guess. And the last one gets something called a hypno hat, which just straight up hypnotizes anyone it's aimed at. I'm not sure why Herb and Scarlet didn't just use this on the Queen to get her crowned a lot earlier, but again, this movie probably didn't think that far ahead.
No, don't say anything.
Oh, he's obviously scared, lady. Give Mom a hug or something. Come on. The next scene is a little drawn out, so I'll speed run through it. Scarlet puts the minions to sleep with a bedtime story, but the story is just about how she really wants the Queen's crown, and if the minions fail to get it for her, she's gonna kill them, I guess. This is a very early sign that something just isn't right with Scarlet. Also, again, you'd think that Scarlet and Herb would just go get the crown themselves. She's clearly done a lot of evil things before and has access to all these gadgets. Why is she relying on these three weird yellow dudes like a day after they met? This movie is so scared to not include the minions for one scene. It's wild. The next day now, and we get right into it, Kevin, Stuart, and Bob infiltrate the Queen's castle. They do it by stacking themselves on top of each other, which is like that one scene from BoJack Horseman. That show is goated. Go watch it if you want to cry. They get caught as soon as they go in their first restricted area, however, but thankfully one of the minions uses the hypno hat and everyone starts dancing like it's a Fortnite lobby or something. Again, I know I'm repeating myself at this point, but why didn't Scarlet and Herb just do this themselves? Like, they literally made the tech. I'm sure they could have pulled it off. Using the lava lamp gun, they get into the crown room, which just has the crown front and center. Interesting how the Queen isn't wearing her crown. Maybe she's just too busy dancing herself. There's this weird bit where some old blind guy is guarding the crown or something, but it ends pretty quick and everything explodes. Eventually, the minions are outside again and end up fighting the Queen in a 3v1 for the crown while some copyrighted 60s music starts playing. This is obviously an unfair fight for the Queen, but since the minions actually have a negative IQ, she low-key ends up winning the fight. Bob is running away from the guards, which is when he sees the infamous sword in the stone. I bet you can see exactly where this is going. In an effort to defend himself, Bob pulls out the sword from this giant rock on the very first try. Does this mean he's the chosen one, or is it because he has robotic arms? I honestly have no idea. So because he pulled the sword out of the stone, all the guards stop attacking the minions, and get this, the Queen straight up forfeits her crown. There's no paperwork, there's no background check. This dude who isn't even human is now the King of England. I made a joke in one of my Despicable Me movies that the minions could probably overthrow the government if they wanted to, because there's just so many of them, but it literally only took one minion here. So these things are either super OP or just have the best RNG I've ever seen. Scarlet sees the news of the minions being crowned king and gets really mad because she thinks she's being betrayed, I guess. Meanwhile, Bob is giving a speech in complete gibberish. I know this is Minionese, which is a mix of a bunch of different languages together, so theoretically, if you knew every language, you could like understand it or something. But let's be honest, no one here knows more than 2 languages max, so he might as well be speaking in that Wingdings font. We get like the 4th or 5th montage of this movie now. I honestly lost count. The minions are having fun around the castle. This is when Scarlet shows up out of nowhere, proving my point once again that she could easily sneak into the castle if she really wanted to. She's super mad because, like I said earlier, she thinks the minions went into business for themselves, but the minions are quick to let her know that actually they genuinely stole the crown for her. This isn't even one of those situations scenes where they're just really scared, so they lie. The minions 100% intended to give Scarlet the crown whenever she arrived, so it's like a big misunderstanding. The minions quickly rewrite all the laws because I guess royalty can just do that whenever they want, and now Scarlet is officially the new Queen of England. I was under the impression that she just wanted the crown because it's very shiny and expensive, but I guess what she really wanted was to be in charge of an entire country. She's not even wearing the crown! Isn't that like the whole point? Where is it even? Did the animators forget to put it in or something? The next scene is kind of weird and kind of comes out of nowhere. Scarlet leads our 3 minions into the basement and ultimately locks them up in a room. She explains that she just can't forgive them for what they've done to her. Not really sure what she's even referring to here, since the minions literally gave her everything she wanted as soon as she asked for it. And listen, so far this movie has been pretty goofy and lighthearted, but here's when the movie takes a dark turn. This is when our story gets very dark. Turns out the room the minions are stuck in is actually a torture chamber. There are multiple ancient torture devices in here that are meant to make death as painful as possible. Not only that, but there's also a guy in here with them who's gonna do the torturing. This is obviously just Herb in a costume, so just like that, all the dramatic tension is cut entirely. He tries to split the minions in half by breaking their spine. I'm not kidding. But as we established at the very beginning, the minions are basically invincible, so this fails. This part's kind of crazy. He uses a noose to try and hang them to death, but again, this has no effect whatsoever. And at this point, you can probably realize the implications this brings to the rest of the franchise. Like, these dudes not only survived wars, plagues, and planet-destroying catastrophes, but they also don't even get hurt when someone directly tries to torture them. There's so many scenes throughout this franchise where the minions are in trouble or around some sort of danger, and turns out none of that matters at all. All of it was one giant chaotic mess and a huge lie. The minions cannot die. Do not feel scared for any of them. They will outlive literally everyone. Anyway, Herb eventually gives up and leaves, which is when the minions find a sewer grate, which isn't even screwed in or anything, so they just lift it up and then escape. They try to find their way out of the castle, which is when they accidentally end up at a random guy's funeral. Not sure why this joke is even in this movie. It feels very out of place. Oh my god, that guy is dead. They're having a funeral and the guy's just dead? What a weird joke. Eventually, it's time for Scarlet's coronation, and as the minions are being very sneaky, they actually get caught and stop the ceremony in its tracks. Scarlet turns on NoClip and orders all the other villains in the room, and I'm not kidding here, to get the minions and execute them. Reminder that this is a kid's movie about silly yellow beans. When the minions run away, it's nighttime now, even though it was like daytime literally 2 minutes ago. We get a bunch of stereotypical evil people chasing them down for a while in what's probably the most chaotic way possible. 2 of the minions end up getting caught, and one of them even drowns. It's pretty dark. Honestly, this movie is all over the place, and there's like a million things happening at every single moment. I'm missing a lot of it now, but if I take the time to explain it all, this will probably be the longest video you ever watch. So, you know. I do want to point notice, though, to one scene that looks like it just doesn't belong in this movie to me. Like, visually, it looks like one of those fake backroom videos or something. It's weird. I don't know. The animation feels more real or fake, or I don't know, one of them. The camera has obvious artificial shake. It like follows him. It's really weird. I don't know. Also, by the end of this chase sequence, it's daytime again for some reason. So in the last 5 minutes of this movie's runtime, one continuous scene in the town went on for about 12 hours in the movie's time. Obviously, this isn't super important, but it definitely took me out of it. Like, why even switch to nighttime at all in the first place? That makes no sense, but okay. Eventually, the villains catch up to the last remaining minion, but thankfully, he somehow ends up in Herb's secret gadget lair thing. And after doing everything the machine specifically tells him not to do, Kevin somehow becomes extremely huge, so all the villains run away. The other 2 minions are about to die, except not really because they're invincible, so none of this matters. But still, Kevin and his giant body show up to save the day. Why does no one care? Is the UK really that wild? Least disruptive day in Great Britain. Also, while the giant minion is walking around now, I guess all the other minions from the cave are here too. I didn't really talk about this because it plays no part in the main story, despite having multiple drawn out scenes. But yeah, all the other minions made it to England now, I guess. All the minions meet up and it's a big reunion. Kevin covers another minion in spit, which is super disturbing, I won't lie. Scarlet is about to use her weapons to kill everyone. Again, not really, because they can't die. I cannot stress this enough. There is no danger here. Eventually, there's this rocket that Scarlet, Herb, and Kevin are all attached to. It blows up and they all explode and die, except for Kevin, because, god damn it, you know why. You know why he doesn't die. Kevin is fine, all the minions are fine. The queen is the queen again, which I'm not sure is the best ending, but it is what it is. But then, in a last second twist, Scarlet and Herb appear again and try to steal the crown one last time. Unfortunately for them, however, they're frozen in their tracks by a very young, very despicable child named Gru. Gru takes the crown and all the minions instinctively follow him, wanting to serve him for the rest of time. This not only shows the beginning of the minions and Gru's relationship, but also proves that Gru is like 50 years old in the Despicable Me movies, which is just insane, to be honest. And that was the entire Minions movie. Was it really that bad? Although I'd say it was actually pretty entertaining, it was also actually pretty bad. It's not offensive, insensitive, or embarrassingly stupid or anything. It's just kind of all over the place and pretty inconsistent with itself. It's almost like it doesn't follow its own rules sometimes. And half of the stuff happens because it's just very convenient for it to happen, for the plot, I guess. I wasn't expecting this thing to transcend generations as the best movie of all time or anything, but after watching the first 3 Despicable Me movies, I was hoping for something a little more well written. But listen, I get it. It's about the Minions. Kids love Minions, so we gotta make it wacky and fun for everyone. But at the end of the day, this is just some random movie, and I'm just some random guy overanalyzing it for fun. It's really not that deep. Here's hoping the second Minions movie gives us some deeper lore and isn't just a billion-dollar cash grab. That would be very unfortunate. Our adventure begins with, get this, something completely unrelated to the Minions at all. And just like that, the movie is already better than the original. We start by following one of the main villains in this story. She's riding her motorcycle around town when all of a sudden the anti-villain league shows up and tries to arrest her. There's like 2 or 3 police vehicles and a handful of AVL agents in this scene, and it still only takes a whopping 25 seconds for the villain to get away entirely. Turns out the villain's name is Bell Bottom. Very clever. She wears bell-bottom pants and stole some sort of map, I guess, is why the AVL was after her. Also, turns out she's part of a famous villain group called the Vicious Six. Not to be mistaken for the Fantastic Four, or the Furious Five, or the Sinister Six, or the Seven. Wow, there's a lot of these groups, actually. Anyway, a quick introduction to everyone in this evil group. There's Stronghold, he's very strong. There's Nunchuck, she's a nun with nunchucks. Is everyone's name in this group a horrible pun? There's John Claude. His name is a reference to Jean-Claude, I'd imagine, and he's got a giant claw, obviously. There's a guy named Svengeance, who has to be Swedish or else this pun doesn't make any sense. And then there's Wild Knuckles, who's the leader of the group and has that name because he punches stuff sometimes. I don't know, his name doesn't really fit him all that well, I'm gonna be honest.
You will become the most powerful villains in the world.
Why is it always the old dude that leads these groups? Wait, he's in his mid-70s? I guess there also is a nun in the group, so whatever. Anyway, the map they stole ends up leading them to some special amulet that when activated gives everyone special powers. At least that's what I think it does. I don't think they actually ever tell us what the thing does. It's just like super shiny, so it must be important, I guess. The map leads them to this very big, very obvious temple with 2 giant dragon statues. Surely someone could have found this without the map, but that's fine. And honestly, hold up, if you look at the map, it doesn't really even tell you that much information. Like, yeah, man, look for trees, I guess. I promise this movie's good, okay? We just gotta get through this intro. Bear with me. Wild Knuckles enters the place completely alone, which is super weird and kind of sus. This guy's like super old. Why would they not send backup to go with him? Thankfully, though, he does find the amulet right away, which is what he was looking for, obviously. But of course, it's never that easy. So a bunch of random monsters spawn in and are waiting for him as he's leaving the temple. There's like a million of these things, and they're all kind of tiny and kind of yellow. So I thought it would have been a cool idea if these things tied into the Minions somehow in some way. But no, we never see these guys ever again. Anyway, so Wild Knuckles is straight up about to die when finally the rest of the Vicious Six show up to save him. As they're flying away, you'll never see this coming, the group decides to turn on Wild Knuckles, taking the amulet from him and cutting the rope so he falls to his death. So because the Vicious Six turned on Wild Knuckles, you might think it actually makes sense to send him into the temple alone. But if I'm being honest, wanting to backstab him in the end might have been a better reason to actually go with him. Like, what if he just didn't succeed in getting the amulet? How long until you find another person to go in there for you? It's probably better to go in with like 3 or 4 of you and make sure you can get the amulet 100%. Anyway, after this scene of betrayal, which definitely won many, many Oscars, we finally cut to the Minions. Wait, still no Minions? Are you sure? This next scene is actually centered around Gru. He's just a child in this movie and still has a lot to prove. I'm pretty sure this movie takes place right after the first Minions movie, but it might skip a year or 2. Honestly, it doesn't matter that much. I'm not looking it up because I don't want to. Gru is in school and his teacher is asking everyone what they want to be when they grow up. We get some normal answers like a firefighter and a teacher, but when it's Gru's turn, he answers that he wants to become a super villain.
I want to be a super villain.
Everyone in class starts laughing at him like he's the only one with gold armor in Minecraft or something. But in a world where very real supervillains exist, do you think this answer would like raise some alarms or something? At the very least, the teacher has to have some obligation to like report this to someone. I mean, come on, lady, he's gonna steal the moon. Anyway, the bell rings and everyone is greeted by their parents picking them up. However, because Gru basically has no father and his mother is emotionally abusive and extremely neglectful, the people picking Gru up are actually the Minions. Excluding title sequences, this Minions movie took around 8 minutes to show the very first Minion on screen. You might think that's a bad thing. I promise you, it's not. Did you just spank him? Isn't he a child? Why does this movie always do that? The next part of Gru's day is just him having fun with some minions. They go to a theater and cut the line so they can enter without buying their tickets. Hold up. Editor Darzii here. I'm pausing the video because I noticed something in editing. There's a sticker on the glass that says this show is sold out. It's obviously referring to a movie because this is a theater. I just wanted to bring that up because I sometimes call movies shows and people seem to get really mad by it sometimes. But this show did it too. So there you go. Once in the movie room, they straight up use Viper's ult from Valorant, and then everyone leaves because there's gas everywhere and they don't want to die. Gru then watches the rest of the movie with a gas mask on, which is probably more annoying than a crowded room, but to each their own. Also, the minions don't wear any masks because they're actually invincible to every kind of harm imaginable. Watch my video on the first movie to find out more. The gang then goes to an arcade where they just cheat a lot. The point is that they're just doing like kid villain stuff. There's honestly something kind of sweet seeing Gru and the minions doing these harmless little things as opposed to trying to take over the world all the time. It's just a nice change. I don't know. I like it. I also have to mention the ice cream shop scene where the movie references the opening shot from the very first Despicable Me movie. Oh, it's like the first movie, except this time it's cheese for some reason. This is when Gru finally gets home and sees that he has a package in the mail. Turns out it's a cartridge from the Vicious 6. It's even got Wild Knuckles' face scratched off, so they must have just sent this out and paid extra for Amazon's premium shipping option. Holy guacamole! Turns out Gru sent an application in a while ago to join the Vicious 6, so this cartridge plays a recording of Bell Bottom letting Gru know that the group is impressed and that Gru has an interview tomorrow at noon. What happens if Gru doesn't get this job? Does the Vicious 6 just take him out on the spot? This seems like a weird job to have an interview for. And of course, because this is a silly cartoon, after the message is played, it blows up. Also, one of the minions starts puffing rings with the toxic fumes of the explosion. It's actually crazy. Gru enters the house and there's this quick bit about how his mom sleeps with a bunch of men and doesn't take care of her child. It's honestly super weird. She's probably just mad she was born with a crimson chin. Anyway, Gru then goes to the basement, which is where the minions are building the secret lair. It's a pretty small space, but everyone's got to start somewhere. Okay, guys? He's only 12 years old. He'll get proper storage for his nukes eventually. Now, I gotta say, so far, this movie actually is pretty interesting. It hasn't relied on the minions too much so far, which is actually kind of a breath of fresh air. But this next part is a little weird. We see this minion get torched by a flamethrower, which is normal. We've already established these guys can't die. But then, as Gru is telling everyone about the interview tomorrow, we see this larger minion step up named Otto. He's visually different than the rest. He has braces on, and like I said, we know his name. It's Otto. His name is Otto. I'll say it now, Otto plays a big part in this movie, but as far as I know, he doesn't show up in any other movie in the entire franchise. He's not in the first 3 Despicable Me movies anyway. So like, what happens to this guy? Does he go missing or something? Has anyone spotted this guy? Anyone seen him at all? Otto just keeps yapping and everyone is kind of annoyed. So the next day now, and Gru is getting ready for his big day. Of course, this is an Illumination movie, so we get the mandatory butt shot for some reason. And as he's about to leave, Gru runs into the minions and lets them know that he wants to do this whole interview thing on his own. This movie has a weird dynamic where Gru hasn't really bonded with the minions yet. Gru thinks of the minions as these disposable level 1 crooks, and then the minions, having -10 emotional awareness at all times, feel a little betrayed because they thought everyone was one big happy family, I guess. Bad news for you, this is an animated movie released in 2022. Finding love and care in one of these things is extremely hard to find. Gru ends up going to the record shop, which I guess is a cover for the Vicious 6's headquarters.
Oh, good. Oh, you're good. My mistake.
You're good, my mistake. Please don't eat me. Who just growls at a kid like that? This is when Gru meets the man at the front desk, who's actually a young Dr. Nefario. This is actually a really cool scene because we know how everything ends up between these two, and this is the very beginning of that. At least that's what I would have said if we didn't see them already meeting in the background of the first Minions movie. Yep, that's right. They already met, and it was off camera. How wonderful. Anyway, Nefario is working as a cover-up for the Vicious 6. Gru tells him why he's there, and he gets led to a secret elevator which brings him to the basement. It's here when Gru sits down next to some much bigger, much older guys who actually look really evil. One of them is reading an edition of Mad magazine, which after some research I found released in January of 1961. This movie takes place in 1976, so the Vicious 6 really need to update their waiting room reading material. Seriously, this thing is older than Gru is. Anyway, Gru enters the main room with all the main villains and tries to talk to them, but the Vicious 6 are confused because he's just a child. But they said earlier in the recording that they were impressed by Gru's resume. So how did they have no idea that Gru was 12 years old? Like his previous education section probably said kindergarten or something. Whatever. And of course I'm ragging on this movie a bit unprovoked. The truth is, so far this Minions movie is a lot more about Gru and the villains than it is the Minions, which I would actually like to commend Illumination for. It actually feels more like a Despicable Me movie so far, to be honest. Anyway, there's some silly shenanigans that happen and all the villains get distracted, which is when Gru, who just got rejected for being a child, decides to steal the the amulet that the Vicious Six got at the very beginning of the movie. The villains find out what's going on, but because this is a prequel and Gru still has a lot of villainy to do, they fail miserably at catching him. Gru runs out of the store, which is when we see Wild Knuckles spying on him. I forgot to mention this, but Wild Knuckles isn't actually dead. He drank a chug jug earlier and is now back to full health. Gru still needs to get away from everyone, however, so he's about to get on his bike, but turns out some of the minions followed him all the way to the record shop. This isn't too bad, but Gru gets annoyed because Otto is one of the minions here and he really just wants to punch him in the face. We get an epic chase scene where all the expert villains are bested by 12-year-olds. And of course, the most interesting and perhaps most tragic part about all of this is that at one point Gru drops the amulet, so he's forced to distract the villains while Otto is left solely responsible in getting the amulet safely home. Surely nothing bad will happen. This guy is reliable, right? Well, the movie wastes no time because the next shot is Gru with his minions asking Otto for the amulet. However, when Otto gives it to him, it's not actually the amulet at all, but actually a rock with some googly eyes or something. I wish I was kidding. Bro, is that a rock? How thick are Otto's glasses, man? There's this long story told by Otto where he willingly trades the amulet to some random girl for the rock, but there's no real reason for him to make that trade at all, other than like, he's an idiot, I guess. He tells the whole story in the gibberish minion language that isn't a real language. No one in the real world speaks minionese. I don't care if there's real words mixed in there. But yeah, Otto is really stupid and ruined everyone's day. Of course. Gru ends up being really angry, so he fires everyone, and then the minions get really sad because they basically put all their stock into Gru as a leader. A little later, and while Gru is leaving the house, one of the minions sees him getting kidnapped. Side note, I'm pretty sure every single installment of this franchise has had some sort of kidnapping scene. Not sure if it means anything. It's a pretty wild coincidence. The person who kidnapped Gru ends up actually being Wild Knuckles. I guess he wants the amulet from him because he saw everything go down earlier. But when Gru doesn't actually have it, he straight up threatens to kill him and then proceeds to torture him with sleep deprivation, which I'm pretty sure is like a war crime or something. To save himself, Gru ends up calling the minions for help. So the idea here is that Otto is now tasked with finding the amulet himself because he's the one who lost it, while the other three main minions travel to San Francisco to try to save Gru. Yeah, Gru is in San Francisco now, by the way. Wild Knuckles lives there, I guess. Well, we can't have the minions walking all the way over there by foot. That would take way too long. Oh, what's that? What about the bikes that are actually straight up rocket ships? Yeah, those are pretty boring. How about we just hijack a plane? Yep, I'm not kidding. The minions put on some pilot uniforms and actually hijack an entire plane with living, breathing passengers inside it. I'm almost positive this is considered some form of domestic terrorism, but I guess their heart's in the right place and they're kind of cute, so I'll give them a pass. This scene is really funny though. You should watch it all if you can find it on YouTube or something. So they end up landing the plane completely fine. They must play a lot of Microsoft Flight Simulator. Eventually they find the address Gru is at, but when they sneak in, they get caught and chased off the property by some guards. This movie's actually kind of funny when it's not shoving fart jokes in your friggin' face every 2 minutes. This is when the minions get cornered because they're very small and very weak. But then, out of nowhere, this random massage therapy lady comes out and saves them with her kung fu abilities. Her appearance makes almost zero sense here, but this movie's made me laugh and given me an actual story to be invested in, so I'll let it slide. The bad guys end up running away, which is when the minions realize they need to learn kung fu themselves so they can enter the house Gru is in and save him. They end up asking the nice lady for kung fu lessons, which is weird.
Kung fu? Por smoochy smoochy?
After some back and forth, however, the lady does eventually agree to train them. I want to mention real quick that this character is voiced by Michelle Yeoh. It's nothing like super special, but I want to mention it because I love her and she's kind of goated as hell. There's a lot of training in the next couple scenes. We see these three minions go from completely incompetent to kind of understanding some things about fighting, maybe. Listen, they're still kind of goofy idiots, but the nice lady teaches them to play to their strengths, which at least gives them the confidence to go save Gru. Also, during this, the villains, remember them? Almost forgot about them, to be honest. Well, they had some scenes where they showed off all their super cool custom cars. It's like a GTA 5 garage or something. They end up going to Gru's house, but obviously he's not there. They find out he's in San Francisco somehow, so they decide to make their way there now. Riveting storytelling. We also get some auto plotline stuff. He basically finds the amulet somehow. It's not really important how he does it. He just does. And is now making his own way to San Francisco towards Gru and his boys. Much like my critiques of Despicable Me 3, you might think I'd get a little annoyed by all the different stories going on in this movie at the same time. It feels like there's a lot of back and forth here between the characters, but what this movie actually does right is that it doesn't give every character the same amount of screen time. The less important aspects of the story are only on screen for a little while, whereas someone like Gru, who eventually gets untied from his literal torture device, subsequently gets a lot more time on screen. He's free to move around now and develop his character again. Let's focus on him. Great idea. It's little things like that that make this movie more enjoyable to watch, in my opinion. Sure, it's not perfect, but it's the closest thing we've had to it in like 10 years, so I'll take what I can get. So like I breezed over earlier, Gru actually got freed by Wild Knuckles. The reason for this is the henchman got beat up by the massage girl earlier, remember? So now Wild Knuckles has no one to do the chores around the house, so he needs Gru to do them. I'm not kidding. What's important to note though is that there's a moment where Gru saves Wild Knuckles' life from some sharks at one point. Stay with me. And so Wild Knuckles kind of has a change of heart. This part actually happens pretty quick, but whatever. The two bond over being evil and stuff, and eventually Wild Knuckles agrees to mentor Gru for a little bit. It's oddly sweet, and again, not something I thought I'd see in a Minions movie, out of all places. The two even do a little bank heist together, you know, as you do while hanging out with the boys. This is actually the very same bank from the Despicable Me movie. It's cool because we get to see the OG bank owner and even a picture of Vector. This scene doesn't mean anything for the story itself, but since we see a childhood photo of Vector in this movie, it means that in Despicable Me, Vector is around the same age as Gru, which would put him at around 45 to 50 years old. Not sure if this was just like an oversight on the writer's part, but yeah, Vector just has a baby face, I guess.
Ugh, he looks weird.
He does look weird, I agree. Someone commented the other day that I look like Vector. That guy. After robbing the bank in world record pace, the two return home to find it completely wrecked. Turns out the Vicious Six visited earlier and just destroyed the entire house. Wild Knuckles gets super sad because the people he trusted the most basically ruined his life. We then get this scene where Gru tries to gas Wild Knuckles up, and we get probably the most wholesome line from a kid who's just trying to help.
Hey, you are a great bad guy, and they are stupid idiots.
Like, he's actually great in this show. I love Gru now. Although Gru does his best to motivate, he ends up missing his QuickTime event, so Wild Knuckles gets mad and tells him to leave him alone. Out of options now, Gru walks away, which is when he randomly meets up with Otto, who has the amulet around his neck and is in San Francisco. Did I mention that already? I forget. He's in San Francisco now. But before they can do anything, the Vicious Six appear and actually steal the amulet back right away. Thankfully, the Anti-Villain League shows up with Silas Ramsbottom, my favorite character of all time. I'll never forget his name. But then, their efforts are completely wasted because the Vicious Six then utilizes the power of the amulet finally, so we can actually find out what this thing does. A bit of magic happens, and I guess it turns the villains into giant animals slash mythical creatures. Like, they turn into giant snakes, bulls, and tigers, and then another one just turns into a dragon out of nowhere. Seems pretty random. At the very least, it's very colorful and makes my brain happy, I guess. The dragon lady then ties Gru up to the giant clock in a way that would basically snap his bones once a couple of minutes have passed. This marks the second time in this Minions movie that a child Gru got tied up and tortured. These movies are actually insane. This is actually a really cool fight scene. The three Kung Fu minions show up finally, but are turned into animals almost right away. Thankfully, they can still fight even though they're animals. And then, with the help of none other than Wild Knuckles himself, the four fight off all the bad guys. I guess Wild Knuckles took a 5-hour energy and had a change of heart. How nice. I'll mention this fact again, but the minions are actually invincible and cannot feel any pain. This has been proven multiple times throughout the franchise. I somehow really doubt they're gonna lose this fight. The moment. Jeez, that was kind of like a jump scare. That was like some Five Nights at Freddy's lore or something. Using their expert Kung Fu skills, and thanks to Otto's persistence in helping Gru, everything is looking good. That is, until Wild Knuckles sadly gets burnt to a crisp in front of our very own eyes, and it actually dies. R.I.P. WK. You probably only had like 5 years left to live anyway. The minions all yell together, and it does something crazy, apparently, and then Gru uses the amulet that he somehow got back and turns the Vicious Six into a bunch of rats. The day is saved, Gru officially rehires his minions, and everything can go back to normal. We then skip ahead to Wild Knuckles' funeral. I'm not kidding. Gru is giving a beautiful speech while the minions sing the most angelic choir music known to man. But it's actually very sad, and Gru cries a lot, and honestly, I kind of feel for him. But then, in the happiest twist in movie history, turns out Wild Knuckles isn't dead at all, and the whole burnt alive thing just didn't happen, or something. That's not explained. Doesn't matter. Gru finds out that Wild Knuckles is still alive, and is super happy now. What's weird is that we never see Wild Knuckles ever again in any other movie, so as far as I know, maybe he actually does die soon after this. I honestly have no idea.
Shoot for the moon, kid. Shoot for the moon.
Get it? Because he literally shoots for the moon in the first movie. That's such a good line. Oh, that was actually good. What the f— And that was the movie Minions, The Rise of Gru. Why was it actually kind of good though? I guess everyone surrounding the production of this movie was tired of the Minions slander and decided it was time to lock in and release a banger. Now again, don't get me wrong, this isn't some 5-star masterpiece that'll be displayed in the Louvre or anything, but by Illumination standards, and especially for a family movie, this was actually really good. Decent writing, decent pacing, and just not having the Minions be a part of every single scene really helped this movie a lot. And I mean like really helped this movie. It's a really fun watch, and at the end of the day, that's all anyone really wanted, right? Our adventure begins with a minute-long credit sequence where Gru is playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe in real life. Told you it would make sense. He's going really, really fast. We even get some first-person action. It really makes you feel like a despicable person. At the end of Gru's drive, we see him arrive at a place called Lycée Pas Bon, which ends up being a high school for villains that Gru attended back in the day. Also, it literally translates to not good high school. They probably meant not good as in evil, but I like to imagine it's a joke on the education system, and they're just saying that this school really sucks. Gru gets out of the car, and we see some minions following closely behind. Of course we do. We can't go 5 minutes without these guys or else Illumination stock plummets. Turns out this is actually a high school reunion, so it's filled to the brim with evil villains and high-profile criminals. Gru immediately locks in because there's a reason for him being there, while the minions remind us that they're all idiots. Ooh, this isn't gonna end well. And there it is. And they're eating him now. How wonderful. Following Gru, we see him bump into an old high school rival named Maxime Lamal. This guy is French, and his last name basically translates to the bad. Who's naming these characters, by the way? This is J.K. Rowling levels of character naming. This guy is accompanied by his girlfriend named Valentina. Her thing is that she has a puppy, I guess, and basically just laughs at nothing all the time. Trust me, you'll see. These two are voiced by Will Ferrell and Sofia Vergara, respectively. I personally find this to be an extremely interesting casting decision, since these two are both pretty famous actors, but one of them puts on an unrecognizable French accent the whole time, while the other one has like 3 lines in the entire movie. And they don't do a bad job or anything. I just think it's weird that sequels in animation always do this. They always pay extra to get these huge names involved, like it's an infinite money glitch or something. Like, it doesn't even sound like Will Ferrell to me. I don't know.
They go poof poof, huh?
Anyway, there's this old lady in a wheelchair, and she's announcing the winner of some villain award or something. Maxime ends up winning the award, and Gru gets kind of annoyed by it. I would tread lightly, Maxime. This dude straight up punched a shark in the face one time. Maxime is making some acceptance speech, which is when he reveals his love for cockroaches. I'm not kidding. He not only keeps one in his jacket, but I guess the twist here is that Maxime is a cockroach himself. What? His jacket rips open, and he has this weird roach body and starts flying. At first, I thought this was just like a suit he had on or something, because like, why would this guy be part insect? But I'm pretty sure this guy actually has the body of a bug. It's kind of weird. But then, in an actual good plot twist that everyone already saw coming, Gru reveals that he's actually a good guy now and attempts to arrest Maxime in front of everyone. The AVL swoop in and provides backup, and after an epic fight and some cool camera work, Maxime loses and gets tied up to be sent to maximum security prison. Surely he would never escape. It is maximum security after all.
I will exterminate you!
Get it? Because he's a bug. But aren't bugs the ones that get exterminated? My brain hurts, dude. I do want to mention that Maxime is seemingly the only person here who gets arrested, despite the room being filled with other villains. But this movie obviously doesn't care about a valid question like that, so I won't either. This is when we get the epic title card, followed by Gru arriving at his house, which kicks off the biggest change in the franchise probably ever. Seriously, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you'll probably end up being really, really surprised by this. Gru arrives home and we see the whole family is here. We got Edith, Margot, and Agnes, or how he likes to call them, his girls. My throat hurts after that. His girls. We still have the pet goat that Agnes might still think is a unicorn, despite not farting out rainbows. And we also get Lucy, who's not only Gru's wife, but get this, and I'm not kidding, is also the mother of their first biological child. Yep, out of nowhere, and with no warning whatsoever, it's revealed that Gru and Lucy have a child now. Like, they actually made this one themselves. I'm not gonna lie, I had no idea this was gonna be a thing. I'm not sure if the trailers for this movie showed the baby at all, but honestly, I was like super surprised by this.
This guy.
What? Is that a joke? They have a baby? What? Oh, and it has Gru's nose. Poor child. The baby's name is Gru Jr., which I think is weird, since now the full name of this baby is Gru? Or is his first name actually not Gru, like his dad? Why is this so complicated? Gru is doing his best to just be a dad, but it's clear that the baby isn't having any of it. He probably just wants to play Roblox on the iPad or something. The baby goes number 2 right there and then, so the minions come in and change him like a NASCAR pit stop. Honestly, this is kind of funny, not gonna lie. After the last movie that I covered, the minions kind of grew on me a little bit. Get it? Grew on me? That's funny. So because this is an Illumination movie, we get to cross off the first thing on our Despicable Me checklist, that being a visible butt on screen. They always do this, check the tapes. This is when the doorbell rings and we see the most goated character in all of fiction, Silas Ramsbottom. I love this man, I will never forget his name. He comes in the house and shows Gru and Lucy a video of Maxime from prison saying that he's gonna get revenge or something. You'll never see this coming, but turns out Maxime already escaped the maximum security prison. It's been like, what, 3 hours maybe? How does that even happen? We're never actually gonna figure out how it happens because because it happens off screen. How epic. So because this cockroach man is a real threat, apparently, the AVL decide to do Gru and his family a favor by moving them into a rich suburban neighborhood and changing their identities entirely, at least until they catch Maxime. The girls obviously take the news pretty rough since it's never easy moving around as a child. We also find out that the goat, dog, and all the minions have to stay behind because it's too high risk or something.
No one can know of your whereabouts, not even family.
Bingo, there's your silver lining.
That's actually a funny joke. He's just an introvert, man. I love it. The family arrives at their new home, and I guess it isn't exactly what they were expecting. It's a little more like an office space than a home, but it's a big place. Okay, you'll get used to it. Also, I guess the minions were allowed to go with them. There's like 3 minions tagging along for some reason. Wasn't Gru a famous villain at one point? Wouldn't the weird yellow dudes that follow him around like Pokemon reveal his identity? Also, there's a bunch of stuff around this house that's branded with the AVL logo. Kind of a weird detail to add considering the family is supposed to be undercover, but whatever. There's a vending machine at the entrance also, and one of the minions gets stuck inside it. Is that the same one that got stuck in the jello? This dude cannot catch a break. All things considered, Gru and Lucy are actually pretty excited by everything because it means they can all spend time as an actual family for once. Gru is given the cover of being a solar panel salesman, and Lucy is now a hairdresser. This kind of makes absolutely no sense at all, but I'll explain why when we get there. Meanwhile, during all this, we go underground where we see Maxime and his girlfriend celebrating with a bunch of cockroaches. I'm not sure if Maxime controls all these bugs with his mind or something, or if they all just really like this guy for some reason. Believe it or not, the army of cockroaches plays very little to no part in this movie at all. You'd think it'd be important. It's not. Maxime gives another speech to his bugs, this time about how he really hates Gru and wants to get revenge. Again, very surface level stuff from this guy. He looks like some TikTok rich kid, and his personality so far basically boils down to, I'm very mad right now. What is crazy is that Maxime's plan to get revenge on Gru is actually to kidnap his youngest born baby, Gru Jr. These movies always have some abnormally dark scene or idea for some reason. So with that, we can now cross off the second thing on our Despicable Me checklist. Oh my god, I'm witnessing a murder right now on my screen. Back to the family, Gru is tasked with taking Margot to her new school while also keeping watch on Gru Jr. all day. On the way out, there's this weird interaction with the neighbor. Gru's trying to be friends, but this dude just doesn't want to talk to him. He'd probably mute him IRL if he could. The only thing of importance to note is that the neighbor has a daughter named Poppy. She's around Margot's age and completely glued to her phone. She's probably viciously retweeting every cat video she finds on Twitter. But a little later, and Gru is dropping Margot off, and this scene is played off like some dramatic moment about anxiety and adolescence and all that, but I don't think we ever see Margot's point of view at school ever in this movie. So like, who knows how it goes? Not me. During this, we find Lucy is tasked with taking care of Edith and Agnes. There's this whole story about how Lucy needs to attend her hair salon job, so she enrolls the kids in karate lessons, kind of as a replacement for babysitting. This honestly makes like 0 sense at all. 1, why does Lucy need to leave her children at a public karate dojo? Can't the AVL provide a babysitter or something? 2, why does Lucy need to actually go to her job while Gru just gets to pretend he's a salesman and spend all day with his kid? They're just staying undercover until Maxime gets caught again. Surely they can both stay home. And 3, even if she does work a real job, why does she work for someone else? Why wouldn't the AVL provide her with her own shop like in the second movie so she can have more control on what she can and can't do? It's super weird. I'm confused. Anyway, the short answer is Lucy fails miserably at anything resembling hairstyling. She even burns all the women's hair off, and Agnes gets bullied by the karate instructor, so Edith crushes his foot and he just dies. Also during this time, we skip over to all the other minions. I guess the anti-villain league is taking care of them in the meantime. They're all training to become special agents or something, which sounds cool, but by the end of this long montage, Silas comes out and is like, all right, boys, I know everyone's been training, but we only need 5 of you. So 5 random minions get chosen, and then they're forcefully put into these futuristic chambers. And when they come out, wouldn't you know it, they all have superpowers. One of them is super strong, another has laser eyes, insert a Homelander meme here. The third one is very stretchy. The fourth one is also very strong, but he eats a lot and is indestructible, I guess. And the last one can fly. Together, this group forms what's called the Mega Minions. That's Mega Minions with an M. Just wanted to clear that up. The point of this is just for them to be superheroes, I guess. The AVL makes them go on a bunch of missions to see how well they can save people. They definitely now all have the physical ability, but sadly, every minion has the intellect of a raging turkey, so they all basically fail their trial exam. This scene honestly goes on for way too long, so while it's playing in the background, let me talk about some things I noticed, I guess. This one guy's whole thing is that he's indestructible, but literally every minion is already indestructible. That's kind of their thing. There's the classic Spider-Man train scene moment that plays out, which I thought was cool. Just wanted to mention it. I find it kind of weird how this universe now has magic inside it, essentially. Like, this show's always been kind of far-fetched, but it's always been tech-related, usually. But with this movie and the last Minions movie, there's just straight-up magic transformations and superpowers, which I think is a little weird. Not to mention the villain has the body of a bug, which is odd. I don't know. Anyway, back to Maxime now, and he's still underground. He reveals a giant cockroach mech thing. All the cockroaches cheer him on, and then he and his girlfriend fly off into the distance to go attack Gru. This is when we find out the only bit of backstory on Maxime, which is a missed opportunity, in my opinion. We find out that when Maxime and Gru went to high school together, there was some sort of talent show going on, and Maxime was getting ready to sing a rendition of Karma Chameleon by Culture Club, but sadly, Gru went on just before him and sang the exact same song, thus stealing his spotlight, so to speak. After the story is told, he also turns some gas station clerk into a roach, which is the first evil thing he's done in this entire movie. So, meanwhile, Lucy runs into that woman who she completely botched the haircut for. None of this actually matters or goes anywhere. It just acts as padding for the movie, and I'm just mentioning it now to prove my point. This scene goes on for way too long. She like runs away or something. It's funny. Back to Gru, and he's trying to relax for a bit and enjoy his coffee, but Gru Jr. is kind of a demon child, so that's just not possible. Later that night, after the minions pull some pranks on each other, Gru is taking out the trash when he's confronted by Poppy, the neighbor. This is meant to be like a big moment in the story, I think. Turns out this is the only instance where being addicted to your phone actually helps. Poppy, who reads a bunch of news headlines apparently, has found out who Gru actually is. She knows that he stole the moon at one point and that he's a well-respected villain. She also blesses us with probably the worst bit of dialogue in the entire movie.
I don't respect boomers. I just mock them.
Oof. That hurt. That was rough. I did not like that. I'm gonna need a quick revive after that one.
Boomers.
So like I said, Poppy knows all about Gru, so she confronts him and lets him know that she wants to pull off some sort of heist and needs his help to do it. And Gru doesn't really have a choice, because if he doesn't help Poppy, then she's just gonna let everyone know who he really is. Again, the AVL moved him here, so I'm not sure why they can't just move him again once he got compromised, but I guess no one really cares. The next day now, and we see Poppy in her treehouse playing Dance Dance Revolution to the song Through the Fire and Flames. If you're like me, you know this song from Guitar Hero 3, so this is actually pretty hype. All right, I love this game. Let's do it. This is when Gru shows up and enters the treehouse. Poppy has a real conversation with him, and we find out that she wants to be a villain. So her big plan and reason for blackmailing Gru here is to enter the high school Gru was in at the very beginning of the movie and to steal the school's mascot. The mascot's name is Lenny, and he's an actual honey badger. I don't know much about these animals, but I'm pretty sure they can get kind of aggressive. So Gru and Poppy make their way to the school just like that. They break in, which is already a serious offense, to be honest. And after some shenanigans with the baby who they brought for some reason, they find Lenny the honey badger sleeping in a cage. Gru Jr. opens the cage, which makes Lenny attack. Gru accidentally injects himself with a tranquilizer. It's a fun time. But eventually the old lady in the wheelchair who owns the school or something, remember her? I guess she sleeps in the school, which is weird, but she hears the noise. So now not only are they trying to steal this animal, but Gru and Poppy have some psychotic elder chasing them down with her modded wheelchair. There's a scene where her tires get really big, and I'm convinced that this is a reference to Axel from Twisted Metal. It just kind of looks really similar to me. And at this point, I'll just take any reference to that game that I can get. Please, Sony, make another game for the love of God, play. But after some running around, eventually the gang gets away. Easy peasy. Poppy is hyped as hell for having the mascot, and Gru actually kind of bonded with her over some villainy stuff. It's kind of sweet, I won't lie. We skip to the next day now, and Gru is playing tennis with his neighbor. There's an actual story to him doing this, but it all leads to a minion being goofy for a couple minutes and only serves as more padding for the runtime. I know a lot of you won't like that I'm skipping stuff like that in this recap, but not only is it actually impossible to recap an entire movie in like 20 minutes, but it's also my channel, so I'll do what I want. Trust me, I'm keeping all the juicy stuff, so you don't have to worry. So while the tennis is going down, I guess the kids are hanging out together, including Poppy. She's just like part of the squad now randomly, and none of the girls question it. We don't really see them become friends on screen, but I guess they are now. But then the doorbell rings, and turns out it's the old wheelchair lady who I've refused to call by name this entire time. I'm too deep now. This is her name to me. She forcefully enters the house, and like you'd think something bad or evil would happen here, but instead Margot just texts Gru, and then him and Lucy show up almost immediately to check up on them. The kids are completely fine, and the old lady just wants her honey badger back, which like honestly is super valid. If someone stole my dog, I'd probably be really mad too. There is some sort of fight that eventually breaks out, and in the middle of all the chaos, of course, Maxime and his girlfriend show up, and at the exact same time, Gru Jr. randomly strolls outside, making this the second easiest kidnapping in the entire franchise. Also with this, we get our third and final item crossed off our Illumination checklist. Wouldn't be a Despicable Me movie without all three of these bad boys. As if kidnapping the baby wasn't bad enough, once Gru chases and catches up to Maxime, we find out that Gru Jr. has been turned into a roach himself, and he's all into it, I think. I'll just take this as confirmation that Maxime is controlling the cockroaches with his mind, and they aren't helping him willingly. But like I said earlier, they don't play a big part in the movie anyway. It's been like an hour and they haven't showed up anywhere, so maybe Maxime just needs to level up to increase his range or something. I don't know. Valentina falls down in the mech and dies, and that's like the whole character basically. Gru lets Gru Jr. know that he loves him, and of course, because love is the most powerful thing in the entire universe, the baby snaps out of it and starts beating Maxime up. Gru then punches Maxime and makes him fall off the building. I'm playing this whole scene out like it's a little goofy, and honestly, it kind of is, but it is a nice moment when Gru verbally acknowledges his love for his child. His baby shows love back. It's great character development, especially considering where Gru was in the very first movie. The Mega Minions show up, by the way, and kill Maxime Mufasa style. What a great ending. The whole family is together in the end. Everyone is safe. Gru starts to cry because he's a dad. Gru Jr. says his first words, that being Dada. The family returns back home, and we see Dr. Nefario for like 5 seconds.
Alright, there you go.
Oh, he's in this movie. Bro just shows up out of nowhere.
Bye then.
Bye!
All right, back in the dungeon I go. See you in 3 months. Everyone is super happy, and I honestly consider the movie pretty much done at this point, but I need to mention what happens after because people will get mad if I don't. After the world is saved, Gru visits Maxime in prison where the two argue about the talent show all those years ago. They decide to have a rematch live in prison for some reason. So we have this whole 2-minute long musical number where the two are singing together. It's kind of weird. Like, why don't they want to kill each other? I don't get it. The coolest part though is that all the previous villains from the older movies are also in this scene. They're all in prison now. We see Vector, Vector's dad, El Macho, Baltazar, Scarlet, the Vicious Six. It's very similar to what Kung Fu Panda 4 did, to be honest. Like, very, very similar. Did they just copy that movie? It's been a while, so some of these people have actually aged quite a bit, but probably should have aged a little more. This franchise has never cared about being logical with the age of its characters, to be fair. We see Vector flossing at one point, and that's kind of it. And that was Despicable Me 4. Was it really that bad? Listen, I get where people are coming from with this one. It's an already short movie with many scenes that are just there to extend the runtime. A lot of stuff doesn't really matter, which gives off the impression that this was just one giant cash grab. I don't know anything about that specifically, but I will agree that this is probably one of the weaker ones in the entire franchise. I know some people get mad by that, but I don't know, it's my opinion, dude. I also believe that in general, this movie is kind of a good time. It's not offensive or anything. You can watch it and still laugh at a couple things. It's just not much of a continuation for the franchise. Like, they did add the baby in there, which was random. It's just like really short and kind of weird. Hey, Illumination, have you heard of TikTok, by the way? You can upload all your short videos on there. You don't have to make a movie every time. I might seem a little harsh, but it's just kind of what I do when I make these videos. I thought it was a cool movie, honestly. So I've watched every single Despicable Me and Minions movie. Despicable Me 1, kind of the biggest banger there is in the whole franchise. Gonna put it at S because I think it's probably the best one. By default, it's like the best tier. That makes sense. Yeah. Despicable Me 2, people are not gonna like that decision at all. I don't know. I didn't like this movie too much. The introduction of Lucy was cool. Didn't hit the same, you know? That's my opinion. Whatever. 3, now this is where people get mad because 2 is a C, but 3 is actually a B. And I'll tell you why. Drew is actually funny. I said it. I wish Drew was in the future movies because he's way too cool to not include. I don't know. Then I did what I do next. The first Minions movie, honestly, off of personal enjoyment, it's kind of a C, I'm not gonna lie. But it did make me laugh, and it's super iconic, and it's the first one they did, and it didn't feel completely soulless. They actually tried, so I'm gonna put it in B. That's fair, right? And then Minions Rise of Gru, kind of a banger, not gonna lie. I want to put it a little higher than Despicable Me 1, but Despicable Me is like so iconic, I gotta keep it in S tier. So I'm gonna put them both in S tier instead of dropping this one down. That makes sense. It's good. And then Despicable Me 4, obviously, we all know, I gotta make another tier for this. And we're putting Despicable Me 4 in the tier. I probably would put it, like, seriously in, like, C with 2. None of these movies really missed entirely, but out of principle and just for the meme, I'm gonna put it in But so that everyone doesn't get mad at me, okay, just know that I'm actually secretly, you know, I'm a Despicable Me 4 enjoyer, secretly. That's my tier list. There you go. D and A tiers not used. There it is. If you want to watch these movies, watch them all, or you can watch me watch them. There you go. As usual, thank you to everyone for watching this video. Thank you to all my members for also being a member, I guess. You guys help out so much and your support means the world to me. If you want to become a member, it starts at only $1 and you get your name on the screen here with everyone else. Again, I appreciate it so much. Thank you guys for watching this video, especially if you watch the whole thing. This one's pretty long, so yeah, I appreciate it. Like and comment, do all that stuff. Paula Abdul scores this one a solid 6 Minion movies out of 5. And yeah, thanks for watching.